Chapter 23-22. Because of his fear of Xianhua, because he was suppressed by her aura, he did not even think of using it. He will no longer be my teacher? Princess Qianyue was overjoyed, feeling the joy of regaining freedom. It was the first time in her life that she had felt so relaxed. Hearing the anger in Su Yu's voice, Princess Qianyue did not care. She could not wait for him to leave. Who cared about him being her teacher? You have finally come out, Su Yu. Xianhua floated down, staring at Su Yu with a serious expression. Xianhua knew Su Yu? Princess Qianyue was slightly surprised. But what surprised her even more was that the rest of the light envoys were looking at Su Yu with complicated expressions. There was awe and fear. In short, besides the light envoys, no one dared to look at Su Yu. It's been a long time, Xianhua. Su Yu was not in a good mood. Xianhua looked at Princess Qianyue, then at Su Yu. Your student is not very good. I think so too. Su Yu sighed. A spar that could have been won had ended in complete defeat. Why don't we spar? Xianhua's eyes were filled with fighting spirit. She was looking forward to seeing if the space domain was as magical as the rumors said. There is no need. That is a battle between the Nightless Palace and the Light Palace. I am an outsider. Su Yu rejected her politely. He did not think there was a need for a meaningless spar. Besides, there were too many people around. It was not a good time to spar. Is that so? Let me tell you a little secret. I will temporarily keep the time-fixing plate. Xianhua smiled as she twirled a lock of hair in front of her chest. Tell me, if I am not satisfied, will I still give the time-fixing plate to you? Xianhua was extremely intelligent and had already guessed that the one who needed the time-fixing plate was not the Nightless Empire, but Su Yu. The time-fixing plate had been in the Light Palace for decades and had never been borrowed by the Nightless Empire. Why would Su Yu want to borrow it when he had just arrived at the Nightless Empire? It was obvious that someone else needed it. Su Yu had become Princess Qianyue's teacher. Xianhua could not help but wonder if that person was Su Yu. Su Yu did not deny it. He smiled bitterly and sighed. What a series of twists and turns. Fine, if you want to spar, I will grant you your wish. But let us find another place. That's exactly what I wanted. Su Yu didn't want anyone to see his full power, but Xianhua didn't want that either. Most of their conversation was done through voice transmission. Thus, outsiders could only see the two of them looking at each other, but they didn't know what they were talking about. After a while, the two of them shifted their gazes. Xianhua returned to the light emissary, while Su Yu walked toward the crowd. When he passed by Princess Qianyu, he said indifferently, "Hand over the evil king bead." Princess Qianyu immediately came to a realization. Right, how could I have forgotten about this? If he had made good use of it just now, he might not have lost. She patted her head in annoyance and regret. Really, how could she forget at such a crucial moment? Since Su Yu had demanded it, no matter how regretful she felt, she had no choice but to hand it over obediently. The spar between the Nightless Temple and the Emissary of Light came to an end. The fate of the Nightless Ming Palace being trampled under the feet of the Emissary of Light had not changed. Even so, the Nightless Temple was already extremely satisfied. After Princess Qianyu returned, she immediately became the target of compliments from the members of the Nightless Temple. Amidst their celebration, the regret in Princess Qianyu's heart dissipated, and she became triumphant. Seeing this, Su Yu shook his head. There was no such thing as a peerless expert in this world. If one's heart did not change, one would not be able to achieve great things, even if one had a peerless constitution. Su, everyone is sincerely happy for the princess. Why are you shaking your head? Mr. Yao Yu had long been watching Su Yu. Seeing Su Yu's actions, he was indignant. Hearing this, a few members of the Nightless Temple looked over. They had long been jealous and dissatisfied with Su Yu. Seeing that he did not give the princess any face, how could they have a good attitude? Princess Qianyu has brought great glory to the Nightless Temple. Everyone else is happy for her, so why are you shaking your head? Exactly, what's the point of pretending to be profound? I feel disgusted when I see him. Princess, is this person really your friend? How could there be such a friend who can't stand you? Princess Qian, you did not dare say anything bad about Su Yu, so she said vaguely. He has always been like this, it's okay. Humph. Mr. Yao Yu heard the grievance in Princess Qian Yu's words and was even more dissatisfied. He said, Princess, rest for a while, I will seek justice for you. Yes. This kind of person, if we don't teach him a lesson, he won't know his place. The members of the Nightless Temple, who had long disliked Su Yu, all cast unfriendly looks at him. Su, how about I challenge you to a duel? Zhang Lai grinned, baring his teeth. Mr. Yao Yu also said, Don't worry, we will not bully you with our numbers. We will give you a fair chance. In fact, if it had been any other time, Su Yu would not have bothered with them. But at this moment, Su Yu was in a very bad mood. And this was not the first time they had provoked him. You want to spar with me? Su Yu stood still, calmly looking at the members of the Nightless Temple. Sure. The members of the Nightless Temple sneered. Of course you can, do you think you have the right to refuse? But who would have thought that Su Yu would say something else? But I am not a troublesome person, so all of you can come at me together to save time. As soon as he said this, the group of members of the Nightless Temple laughed angrily. Su, is your brain not working well? What nonsense are you spouting? Perhaps he is too used to being sheltered by women. He is too complacent. Haha, such a brainless person really needs our help to wake him up. Mr. Yao Yu smiled. Don't worry, the Nightless Temple is not so shameless. We have agreed to a duel, so we will do it. I will go first. He led the way to the center of the square. Su Yu's eyes were calm as he said indifferently, I told you to come at me together. As soon as he said this, the members of the Nightless Temple, who were secretly laughing at him, were enveloped by a shocking space energy. Then, just like Princess Qian Yu, they were transported by space. Everyone gathered around Mr. Yao Yu, standing in front of Su Yu. They were shocked. Wasn't this the divine technique of Princess Qian Yu's teacher, the space domain? Young Master Yao Yu, on the other hand, was shocked to the extreme. He cried out involuntarily, You are. He did not say it out loud because he could not believe it. Princess Qian Yu's teacher was Su Yu, who was about the same age as them. He looked at Princess Qian Yu and asked, Princess, your teacher is Su Yu? Princess Qian Yu hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Yes, he used to be. Hearing this, Mr. Yao Yu was dumbfounded. Chapter 23:23. Haha, the Nightless Palace is a bunch of idiots. We were all challenged by Su Yu alone, let alone this bunch of trash from the Nightless Palace. The funny thing is, they want to challenge Su Yu alone? Why don't they look at themselves in the mirror? That's true. A peerless heaven ruler like Su Yu would definitely be treated with the utmost respect in the Palace of Light. It's laughable that in the Sleepless Empire, he's being provoked and mocked by a few insignificant people. I've learned a lot today. All these years, the Nightless Empire's talents have never been popular, and it's not without reason. Just look at the performance of these people. If they don't respect their talents, they won't be willing to work for them. Hearing this, Mr. Yao Yu's body stiffened. The other members of the Nightless Palace were equally shocked. Su Yu had challenged all the envoys of light alone? This couldn't be true. Princess Qianyue sucked in a breath of cold air, staring at Su Yu in disbelief. She had never thought that Su Yu was anything special, and now she knew that he was a peerless heaven ruler. But she didn't believe it was true either. You want to challenge me, right? Are you all ready? Su Yu said calmly, looking at the members of the Nightless Palace in front of him. Mr. Yao Yu was startled, and 2 lines of sweat rolled down his forehead. He quickly waved his hands and said, Mr. Su, it's all a misunderstanding. The rest of the members of the Nightless Palace were also shocked. They were challenging the most terrifying heaven ruler present. They were insignificant people who couldn't even defeat Xianyin, but who was Su Yu? The peerless person who could suppress Xianyin and all the envoys of light alone? Su Yu had been sick of them for a long time. He silently raised a hand and slowly clenched it into a fist. You didn't misunderstand anything. As he spoke, he casually punched through the air. In an instant, a shocking pressure came crashing down. Mr. Yao Yu's expression changed dramatically, and he hurriedly said, "Quick, quick, defend." Suddenly, they each displayed their own domains, joining forces to defend against this seemingly ordinary punch. Rumble, however, there was only the sound of several domains being torn apart, one after another. Their domains were like thin pieces of paper in front of a gale, and they were all torn into pieces. All the members of the Nightless Ming Palace, including young Master Yao Yu, had to endure the peerless power that could topple mountains and overturn seas. All of them coughed up blood and were heavily injured, lying on the ground and howling in pain. At this moment, the spectators from the Nightless Kingdom fell into dead silence. It was simply unbelievable. Almost all the hall members of the Nightless Ming Temple joined hands, but could not block a simple punch from a peer. Princess Qianyue was also stunned. Su Yu had really crushed the entire Nightless Palace with a single punch. At this moment, Su Yu's position in her heart was magnified. He was the most well-hidden heavenly prodigy of this era. What young Master Yao Yu! What emissary of light! None of them could compare to him. All of a sudden, she thought of what Su Yu had said, and her heart tightened, while a sense of remorse filled her heart. The person with the calmest expression was the emissary of light. They had already witnessed Su Yu's true abilities. The fate of the Nightless Ming Palace was completely within their expectations. Asking for humiliation, Zheng Yuan mocked. Even Xian Hua cast a disappointed look at the Nightless Ming Palace. It's hard to believe that we have to work with such a person. Not only were they disappointed, but the people of the Nightless Kingdom were also extremely disappointed. Apart from Princess Qianyue, the performance of the Nightless Ming Palace could only be described with one word: unsightly. Not only had they not brought glory to the Nightless Kingdom, but they had also embarrassed the Empire. Retracting his fist, Su Yu's expression did not change as he silently left the plaza. Wherever he passed, the crowd automatically opened up a path for him, their gazes filled with deep respect. Teacher Su, wait for me." Princess Qianyue bit her lip and quickly chased after him. But Su Yu did not stop, nor did he turn back. He only said, "I said, from today onwards, I am no longer your teacher. You are free." After saying this, he left alone. Princess Qianyue stood where she was, feeling wronged and embarrassed. Didn't he think it was too much to treat her like this in front of everyone? Humph, what's so great about that? Princess Qianyue secretly snorted. There were many powerful fighters in the Empire, and Su Yu's presence made no difference. A friendly exchange had ended in a unique way. The people of the Nightless Kingdom remembered the shocking talent of the Envoy of Light and Light, but they also remembered the unknown silver-haired human. He was the one who would be remembered today. The next day, the monarch issued an order that shook the empire. From now on, the Nightless Ming Palace would be abolished, and the existing organizations of the Nightless Ming Palace would be disbanded immediately. From now on, there would be no more Nightless Ming Palace. At the same time, the former members of the Nightless Ming Palace, with the exception of Princess Qianyue, were all sent to the border, never to return to the imperial city. In other words, they had even lost the right to participate in the Glaze ancient cave. The reason for this was that after the exchange ended, all the influential people who had personally witnessed the battle had denounced the incompetence and ugliness of the Nightless Ming Palace with righteous indignation. After learning about the embarrassing behavior of the Nightless Ming Palace, the monarch was so angry that he almost fainted. Hence, in a rage, he permanently abolished the Nightless Ming Palace and severely punished the members who had embarrassed the empire. But the monarch was even angrier because of Princess Qianyue. He had put in a lot of effort to invite Su Yu to tutor her. The final result was also very satisfactory to the monarch. In just half a year, Princess Qian Yu had improved tremendously, and she had defeated the third-ranked envoy of Radiant Light, bringing glory to the royal kingdom. However, after hearing the scene of her battle with Xianhua, as well as Su Yu's furious declaration that he would no longer care about her, she was furious. If he was the teacher, he would have ignored Princess Qian Yu as well. As the saying goes, mud can't help a wall, it's nothing more than this. What should have been a sure-win battle was actually a crushing defeat. And the reason for his defeat was because he lacked confidence. Pass the message to Su Yu. The monarch decided to persuade Su Yu to help his daughter again. At that moment, someone from the princess mansion came to report that Princess Qian Yu had lost her temper and had thrown all of Su Yu's belongings out of the princess mansion. Impudent! The monarch was enraged. If Su Yu found out about this, he would not be able to smooth things over even if he wanted to. Men, relay my orders. From today onwards, Princess Qian Yu is to be placed under house arrest. She is not to step out of her room. Yes. After giving his orders, the monarch was about to summon Su Yu again. But after thinking about it, he decided to meet Su Yu personally. He first summoned Xie Xiaoye to ask where Su Yu had gone. Xie Xiaoye did not hide anything. Xianhua invited Su Yu to exchange pointers. I was just about to go. A battle with Xianhua? The monarch was very interested. He really wanted to know how deep Su Yu's abilities were. Chapter 23-24. In a secret training field within the Imperial Palace. This place was surrounded by an exceptionally sturdy defense that was indestructible. Moreover, it had a very powerful shielding effect, so ordinary people would not be able to see through it. At this moment, Su Yu, Xianhua, and Xian Yin were present. Both sides were preparing for the upcoming spar. Young Master Su, I hope you don't mind if I preside over your sparring matches. Xian Yin's lips curled into a faint smile. Su Yu took a look at her. How could he forget her hostile gaze when she looked at him in the crowd 2 months ago? I don't mind, Su Yu replied calmly. The hostility was nothing. The other emissaries of light had also cast hostile gazes at him. As long as she didn't overestimate herself. Mr. Su, regardless of the outcome of this battle, I will hand over the time-fixing plate immediately. Xianhua was looking forward to the battle with Su Yu. Even if she was defeated by Su Yu, she would still accept it. That would be for the best, Su Yu said calmly. In order to obtain the star positioning plate, he had experienced many twists and turns. First, he went to the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce to buy information. In the end, he was cheated of a sum of money. Then, he snuck into the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce to steal information. They had obtained the information with great difficulty. The time-fixing plate had already fallen into the hands of the Radiant Palace. It took a lot of effort to obtain the help of the Nightless Kingdom's monarch, and only then was he able to borrow the star positioning plate. Unexpectedly, Xianhua interfered, needing to exchange pointers first. Su Yu felt that his patience had run out. If Xianhua still wanted to cause trouble in the future, then she really shouldn't blame him for losing his temper. Seeing Su Yu's slight displeasure, Xianhua said, I, Xianhua, am a man of my word. Let's start, Su Yu said. At this moment, Xie Xiaoye and the king walked over. Hee, just in time. Xie Xiaoye chuckled. She chose a good spot to watch the battle. The monarch smiled and nodded at Su Yu from afar. He even nodded at Xianhua and Xian Yin. When his gaze drifted past Xianhua, he did not do anything. He merely paused for a moment and curiously sized up Xianhua, the expert of the current generation whose name had shaken the Lazuli civilization. But when his gaze landed on Xian Yin, his eyes suddenly stopped, and a thoughtful look appeared on his face. However, he hid it very well. It was only for a fleeting moment before he looked away as if nothing had happened. On the stage, Su Yu and Xianhua had already finished their preparations. Who's first? Even though Xian Hua seemed to be smiling, she was actually quite nervous. Facing Su Yu, who wore a calm expression, she felt as if Mount Tai was pressing down on her. Su Yu said, "You go first." If someone else said this to Xian Hua, they would probably think that they were overestimating themselves and arrogant. However, since it was said by Su Yu, Xian Hua accepted it gladly. Against a space domain expert like Su Yu, he really could not underestimate him. Be careful. Xian Hua took out a brush with a golden tip and quickly drew a picture in the air. The painting depicted a sword formation. There was a total of 8 swords, and each sword was a Dao artifact. This was a Dao artifact that Xian Hua had memorized after observing the Dao masters who used swords over the years. After that, he concentrated on his research and learned several types of sword formations. Coupled with a Dao artifact, the might of this sword formation could be imagined. Xie Xiaoye clicked her tongue. In a sense, this Xian painting is invincible. The monarch agreed. The uniqueness of the sword formation is that it can multiply the might of several swords. The might of this sword formation should far surpass the combined might of 8 swords. While the two of them were commenting, Xian Hua had already finished drawing. The sword formation materialized from illusion. As Xian Hua pointed the tip of the brush, the sword formation rustled like leaves blooming. It took on an oval shape and spread out in all directions, surrounding Su Yu's head. Kill! Xian Hua bellowed. The 8 swords turned into 8 brilliant rays of light at the same time, revolving rapidly in their respective trajectories. The sword energy released in the process of revolving overlapped with each other and grew stronger. In a moment, 8 extremely terrifying sword energy had been formed. Each sword energy could kill a path master at the level of a family master. At the beginning of the 8 sword energy, their might could be imagined. Swish, swish, swish. The 8 sword energy struck at the same time, producing a terrifying might. Xie Xiaoye could not help but worry for Su Yu. However, Su Yu was very calm. He released the space domain casually, and a layer of flickering folded space appeared around his body. Thud! The 8 sword energy pierced into the folded space. Their trajectories were forcibly changed, and they flew past Su Yu's body. Xian Hua's pupils shrank. The space domain was indeed tricky. The divine technique attacking her could completely change its trajectory in a short time. Kill again. If the first attack didn't work, she would strike again. The sword formation shot out another 8 sword energy. Before all of them had been shot out, Xian Hua continued to manipulate the sword formation, releasing powerful sword energy again and again. In a few breaths' time, the sky above the training ground was filled with terrifying thick sword energy. They attacked Su Yu from different directions, from different angles, and from different trajectories, like a violent storm. What was even more spectacular was that any sword energy shot at Su Yu would be shot out from another direction. After a moment, the sword formation drawn by Xian Hua finally could not bear it anymore. It turned into a painting and collapsed. After all, it was not a real object. Once the special domain within it dissipated, it would naturally collapse as well. Do you want to continue? Su Yu did not fight back at all just now. If the painting created by Xian Hua was only at that level, it would not be able to do anything to the space domain. Unless she could break the space domain. Of course. The more Xian Hua fought, the more delighted she became. She had been in the Palace of Light for many years, but she had never found a worthy opponent. Although the destined woman was better than her, she had been in isolation for a long time. Kong Chu, who was second only to her, was much weaker than her. She was not a suitable opponent. Su Yu was the only one she had met so far. Destiny Spear. Xian Hua's eyes turned sharp. She quickly drew out an ice spear with barbs all over it. Unlike the sword-shaped doctrine artifact, this Destiny Spear emitted a shocking spiritual pressure. The 8 swords combined were not even 1/10 of this spear. The monarch was surprised. The great palace master is really willing to let Xian Hua copy his own doctrine artifact. The Destiny Spear was the great palace master's personal divine spear. Its power was extremely shocking. Pierce. Whoosh. The spear pierced forward, emitting a terrifying spiritual pressure. The space domain on the surface of Su Yu's body flickered slightly. Su Yu finally made his move. Space folding infinitely. The space domain changed rapidly, becoming a strange place that kept overlapping. The Destiny Spear stabbed forward. Su Yu was very close, but he was folded into another space by the space domain. He finally got out of this space, only to be folded again. Then, the cycle would repeat itself again and again. Finally, the Destiny Spear collapsed. Xian Hua clenched her teeth and yelled, "Fine, I'll use my last move. You really have to be careful." She had wanted to hold back, but now it seemed that if she did not show her true abilities, she could not do anything to Su Yu even if he stood still. Puff! She suddenly bit the tip of her tongue and spat out a mouthful of blood on the tip of the brush, dyeing the golden tip of the brush red. When she drew again, she could vaguely feel an abnormal evil energy fluctuating. Under her lightning-fast drawing, a figure that made Su Yu's eyes turn cold appeared. On the contrary, the monarch was slightly confused. Who is that figure? It was obvious that Xian Hua wanted to depict the entire person clearly, but there seemed to be some kind of power that made Xian Hua's drawing only a vague outline. Xie Xiaoye was slightly shocked. What kind of person can't be drawn? Only Su Yu knew. Because not long ago, he had devoured a part of this person's soul. Yes, it was Prince Xiaoyao. Although he did not have a specific face, the outline and the aura he emitted were unforgettable to Su Yu. However, Xian Hua probably did not depict Prince Xiaoyao himself. Otherwise, she would not even be able to draw. How could a living being be able to depict the Prince of the Holy Mountain? However, what she was describing was not the second clone that Su Yu had killed. Who is this person? What is his name? Xian Hua said solemnly as she drew. 10 years ago, when I was traveling outside, I saw this person's figure from afar. He came from a faraway region, and he easily destroyed an abandoned 7-star civilization in front of him with a kick. In just an instant, the 7-star civilization was wiped out. All these years, I have been trying to draw him, but I could only draw the outline, Xian Hua said in confusion. Xian Hua said in confusion. I clearly remember his facial features, but every time I try to draw it in detail, there's always an invisible force that stops me. It makes me either make a mistake, or all kinds of accidents happen. For example, the brush suddenly breaks, or my hand suddenly trembles. Hearing her description, Xie Xiaoye and the monarch became solemn. How could such a strange thing happen? Destroying a 7-star civilization with a kick, and according to the description, it should have been effortless. Such a person must be the taboo of the taboo. But why would he appear in the East region? Didn't he only appear in the faraway 8-star civilization? Su Yu's calm face turned gloomy. He knew who the other party was, and he even knew why the other party had come. It was another clone sent by Prince Xiaoyao to the East region to look for him. A great sense of danger suddenly descended upon them. He had to improve his strength as soon as possible, or else. So, this person is very dangerous. Su Yu, if you are no match for him, admit defeat immediately. Don't risk your life, Xian Hua said solemnly. Su Yu stared at the outline of Prince Xiaoyao's clone, and he could feel the strong threat it posed. But it was still within his acceptable range. Bring it on! Su Yu's body was filled with a layer of holy light, and layers of scales covered his whole body. At the same time, a dragon-shaped long sword appeared in his hand. Seeing the sword, the monarch's pupils shrank fiercely. The divine sword passed down by the dragon clan of the South region? He stared at Su Yu in disbelief, his eyes full of shock. The South region was the most mysterious region outside the region, and it had always been a land of crouching tigers and hidden dragons. Among them, the one that was most talked about was the Dragon Clan. It was a place where strong men emerged in large numbers and intimidated the top civilizations outside the region. Especially tens of millions of years ago, after the fall of the previous Dragon Emperor, under the leadership of the new Dragon Emperor, the Dragon Clan's civilization developed to its peak. Uncanny, top-notch almighties appeared in the clan one after another, suppressing all the beings outside the region. Chapter 23-25. In just tens of millions of years, the Dragon Clan had risen from a low-class, 7-star civilization to a top-notch civilization. However, there was a rumor circulating in the outer world. It was said that the Dragon Clan's inherited sword, the Royal Dragon Sword, had never returned. The king of the Sleepless Empire did not believe this rumor. However, the Royal Dragon Sword in Su Yu's hands shocked him. How could it be in Su Yu's hands? The king was shocked. Looking at Su Yu's half-human, half-dragon form, he was even more confused. Could Su Yu not be a human, but from the faraway Dragon Clan? Thinking of this, his heart was filled with excitement. As he pondered, Xian Hua manipulated the silhouette to attack. The silhouette did not seem to be proficient in any domain or divine technique. It was merely a kick. However, it was this kick that the owner of the silhouette destroyed the entire 7-star civilization. The power exerted by the silhouette was not even a millionth of its owner's. However, with this kick, the seals of the entire secret training ground were shaking wildly as if they were about to shatter. The king's expression changed drastically. He had to act to maintain the seals. Otherwise, if the seals were really destroyed, the remaining power would leak out and harm the innocent. Staring at the kick, Su Yu's eyes were cold. "All right, I haven't tried the Royal Dragon Sword in a long time," Su Yu said in a low voice. The power of the Royal Dragon Sword was based on the purity of the dragon blood in the wielder's body. In the Palace of Light, he had been baptized in dragon blood. The dragon blood in his body was many times more than before. The power of the Royal Dragon Sword was unleashed. With a majestic roar of a dragon, the entire Royal Dragon Sword transformed into a dazzling golden dragon and rushed towards the silhouette that was crushing down on them. A foot and a dragon collided in the air, erupting with a terrifying power. It was almost at the level of Xia Yan. The seals in all directions were on the verge of collapse. The king exerted his great power to forcibly stabilize the seals. He was secretly relieved. Fortunately, he had rushed over to watch the battle. Otherwise, without anyone to organize the battle, it would have caused a huge commotion. Fortunately, the silhouette formed by Xian Hua was extremely unstable. After the kick, it lost its strength and collapsed. The golden giant dragon released by Su Yu gradually dimmed and turned back into the Royal Dragon Sword. The full force attack of the two seemed to be a draw. But in reality, I lost. I admire you. Xian Hua stared at the Royal Dragon Sword in Su Yu's palm. Although she was able to draw such a powerful outline, it was extremely unstable. On the other hand, Su Yu was able to continuously display the earth-shattering and majestic sword technique. If this was a battle of life and death, Su Yu would have already struck him with his sword. As for Xian Hua, he didn't have the chance to draw the outline again. Su Yu put away the Royal Dragon Sword and glanced at the monarch. Although he was fighting Xian Hua with all his strength, he could see the situation around him clearly. It seemed that the monarch recognized the sword. "Thank you for letting me win," Su Yu said to Xian Hua as if nothing had happened. Papa Xie Xiaoya's eyes were full of admiration. "Amazing! Both of them are peerlessly powerful." The king stood up and couldn't help but praise. "Within the same generation, there shouldn't be many who can defeat the two of you." "You flatter me, Your Majesty." The arrogant attitude between Xian Hua's brows disappeared. After this battle, the arrogance in her heart had been greatly polished. Even someone as powerful as Su Yu kept a low profile. What right did a loser like her have to be arrogant? After the battle, Xian Hua kept her promise. She took out a space storage device and handed it to Suyu. Time-fixing plate. Please check it. Suyu let out a long breath. He had finally gotten it. However, just as Suyu was about to reach out to take it, Xian Yin, who was standing at the side and presiding over the battle, suddenly attacked without warning. Heaven and earth, suppress. Suddenly, the 4 words, heaven, heaven, and earth, suppressed Xianhua. Xian Yin's attack was sudden and unexpected. Xianhua was caught off guard and was suppressed on the spot. When her body couldn't move, she loosened her grip and the space storage device was snatched away. Xian Yin, what are you doing? Xianhua turned to look and saw Xian Yin holding the space storage device, a twisted smile on her face. I finally got it. Xianhua shuddered. You are not Xian Yin. Who are you? Hee. Xian Yin laughed coldly and turned to rush out. However, she had no choice but to stop after taking one step. Her eyes were solemn as she looked at the seemingly empty exit. An enormous net that was weaved with extremely thick energy of a Tao Lord had suddenly been set up at the exit. If someone accidentally touched it, they would be stuck to it and unable to move. I knew there was something wrong with you. The Emperor of the Nightless Empire teleported to the exit and looked at Xian Yin coldly. Others might not have noticed it, but he could vaguely feel a dark aura lurking in Xian Yin's body. That power didn't belong to the Palace of Light. Therefore, he had secretly made preparations to seal the exit. As expected, the aura in her body was up to no good. It was trying to snatch the time-fixing plate. In the past, when she was with Xianhua, the owner of this aura didn't know where to start. Not only was Xianhua very vigilant, but Deputy Palace Master Lu was always by her side to protect her. Only now, when Xianhua was relaxed, did she find the perfect opportunity. So what if I saw it? You, Xiao Lifeng? Unless the Palace Master of the Palace of Light is here. Unexpectedly, the owner of the aura didn't panic. Instead, he was fearless and didn't fear Xiao Lifeng at all. Xiao Lifeng's eyes were cold. If I'm not wrong, you are hunting shadow. A junior like you doesn't have the right to speak to me like this. Suddenly, the entire training ground was enveloped by an extremely sinister aura. Hee, if my disciple doesn't have the right, then as his master, I should have the right. Crash, in an instant, all the seals in the training ground were shattered. Tens of thousands of ghostly shadows descended and pounced toward Xiao Lifeng. Each of the ghostly shadows was at the level of a half-path master. With tens of thousands of ghostly shadows, Su Yu and Xian Hua couldn't handle them at all. Retreat. Xiao Lifeng's eyes were solemn. The master of the sword-seeking pavilion has come personally. Open heaven 10 stars. Xiao Lifeng roared, displaying his powerful domain for the first time. 10 resplendent stars released a brilliance comparable to the sun and moon. Under the cover of the brilliance, everything was vanishing, especially those ferocious ghostly shadows, as if they had met their nemesis, fleeing in a panic. Taking advantage of the moment when the 2 great figures were fighting, a black shadow suddenly leapt out from Xian Yin's body, taking the space storage artifact with it as it escaped. Su Yu's eyes were ice-cold. He was truly enraged. He had gone to great lengths to obtain the time-fixing plate, but someone from the sword-seeking pavilion had appeared at the last moment to plot to snatch it? Were they purposely trying to oppose him? Trying to escape? Su Yu summoned the royal dragon sword and slashed. It was no weaker than Hunting Shadow's power just now. But strangely, Hunting Shadow was unscathed. It was as if Su Yu's sword had struck thin air. Hee, do you think you can do anything to me with that little ability of yours? I'll gladly accept the time-fixing plate. Hunting Shadow laughed in disdain. Su Yu's eyes were calm. Isn't it just a secret technique of the soul? The so-called Black Shadow was not a physical entity, but an application of the secret technique of the soul. It was just very strange, and ordinary people couldn't tell. But Su Yu had mastered the law of the soul. He could see the clues with a closer look. So what if you can tell? You don't deserve to keep me here. Hunting Shadow was shocked. Someone had seen through him? But he was fearless. As a soul body, no physical attack could do anything to him. Su Yu did not say a word, his palms forming seals. At that moment, an identical Su Yu walked out of his body, as if he was a duplicate. Whoosh, the duplicate Su Yu was naturally Su Yu's soul. Having cultivated to the undead soul realm, his soul had become terrifyingly solid. He had never had the chance to use it, but now he had a chance to use it. With the help of the space domain, Su Yu's soul teleported behind Hunting Shadow, casually punching toward his back. Hunting Shadow sneered. You dare come out of your body to fight me? You're really looking for death. The body was the armor and the soul was the heart. Leaving the armor and coming out to fight with the heart alone was asking for death. As Hunting Shadow fled, he casually counterattacked. Crash! The scene of Su Yu's soul being scattered by a palm did not occur. Instead, a terrifying destructive force came from Su Yu's soul, spreading from his palm to his entire body. Hunting Shadow let out a cry of pain, as if his body was being cut by tens of thousands of knives. The Sword Seeker Pavilion Master, who was fighting Xiao Lifeng, had just realized that his beloved disciple had been brutally killed in the soul aspect that he specialized in. Insolent child, you're asking for death. The Sword Seeker Pavilion Master threw out a ghostly shadow. Xiao Lifeng was also shocked. Not only had Su Yu's physique been trained to the extreme, but even his soul was unimaginably strong. Xianhua was also shocked. She had thought that sword technique was the pinnacle of Su Yu's abilities. Now it seemed that was just the tip of the iceberg. Just how strong was this man? But before the Sword Seeker Pavilion Master could attack Su Yu, he had to ask Xiao Lifeng first. Haha, shameless old thing, you have the face to attack a junior? Xiao Lifeng snorted. With a shake of his sleeves, several small swords flew out, chasing after the ghostly shadows and killing them one by one. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Su Yu activated the soul energy in his body, pouring it into his fist. Puff, with a horrible shriek, Hunting Shadow's soul was torn into pieces, turning into black shadows. However, it did not dissipate because of this. Instead, it continued to flee in all directions. A normal soul would have died on the spot from the disintegration. Hunting Shadow was different, but the number of souls that could escape from Su Yu could be counted on one hand. Hunting Shadow was clearly not one of them. Soul devouring. Su Yu's forehead opened, and a boundless vortex sucked in all the escaping souls. Hunting Shadow finally felt fear, dozens of fragments shouting at the same time, "Master, save me!" Seeing this, the Sword Seeker Pavilion Master was furious. "How dare you! Don't give me the chance to grind your bones to dust." The number of people who wanted to grind Su Yu to dust was probably enough to fill a small civilization. Chapter 23-26. Whoosh! Su Yu increased his devouring power, and all of the pitch-black shadows were devoured. Having failed to protect his disciple, the master of the Sword Seek Pavilion flew into a rage. He charged towards Su Yu, disregarding everything else. Even if Xiao Lifeng found an opening in his back and ruthlessly attacked him. Die! The sword-seeking Pavilion Master's murderous intent was shocking. He lifted his finger and pointed at Su Yu. All of a sudden, Su Yu was surrounded by layers of ghost shadows, which were crazily gnawing at his body. Demons and monsters! Su Yu was fearless. If Xiao Lifeng were to attack him like this, he would still be a little afraid. But manipulating ghosts to deal with him was like a fat pig running into a butcher's house. Shwa Su Yu drew out the crystal sword with his left hand and activated it. Intense limitless karmic flame gushed out. As Su Yu swept his sword horizontally, the flaming arc completely evaporated the ghost shadows on his body. Just as he was about to defend against the Sword Seek Pavilion Master's fury with all his might, his figure suddenly turned, and he grabbed the space storage artifact that Su Yu did not have the time to take away, then quickly escaped. From afar, he spat out a few words of resentment. "Brat, I'll remember you." Xiao Yifeng's expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly instructed Su Yu and Xian Hua, "Ask for the palace's protection quickly, and don't take even half a step out of the palace." He himself was chasing after the sword-seek pavilion master with all his might. They couldn't afford to lose the star-fixing plate. This was the possession of the palace lord of the Light Palace. It was not easy for her to lend it to him. If he lost it just like that, what would the palace lord of the Light Palace think? Would the cooperation that they had worked so hard to establish continue? Of course not. Xiao Yifeng's heart sank. Damn it, I was too careless. In reality, when he had secretly reached an agreement with the Light Palace, he had already considered that the Sword Seeker Pavilion would not let the matter rest. If the two of them worked together, the sword-seeking pavilion would definitely be at a disadvantage once the Glaze Ancient Cave opened. Therefore, the swordsmanship-seeking pavilion might come to destroy the cooperation. He hadn't expected them to arrive so quickly, and it was even the master of the swordsmanship-seeking pavilion himself. Su Yu's heart also sank. He stared at the empty sky. He couldn't catch up even if he wanted to. Seek Sword Pavilion. Su Yu had a sullen feeling, as if someone had plucked his peaches. He had painstakingly obtained the time-fixing plate, but it was snatched away midway. "Don't worry, young Master Su." Xian Hua had a strange smile on her face. She was treating Xuanin's injuries. Xuanin's soul had been weakened after being occupied by someone for a long period of time. After a short period of treatment, she had recovered a lot. Xian Hua stood up and smiled faintly. "Xianin is my older sister. How can a younger sister not be able to tell that my older sister's actions and words are completely different?" Su Yu's eyes shone brightly. "You mean," Xian Hua smiled faintly and said, "I've been observing Xuanin's changes. I've guessed that someone might have taken over her body, but I'm not sure. That's why I didn't alert the enemy." As she spoke, Xian Hua withdrew a new spatial storage artifact and said, "So, I used an empty spatial storage artifact to test it out. In the end, Hunting Shadow really did show his fox's tail, and he seized the spatial ring and fled." Su Yu's emotions were undulating like a mountain range, and it was difficult for him to conceal the joy in his heart. Taking a look at the spatial storage device, Han Li saw a mountainous compass with strange runes engraved on it. Judging from its appearance, it was indeed the time-fixing plate. "Thank you." Su Yu was extremely grateful. Luckily, Xian Hua was smart and had kept a trick up her sleeve. Otherwise, the consequences would have been unimaginable. "It was my older sister's carelessness," Xian Hua said. "It was only right for me to take precautions." Xianin lowered her head in shame. She had almost committed a grave mistake. Su Yu glanced at Xianin and said, "Since it's over, it's fine. But if the Sword Seeker Pavilion Master finds out the truth, he'll probably hate me even more." Xian Hua covered her mouth and laughed. "Then you better pray for your own good." The Sword Seeker Pavilion Master and his disciple, Hunting Shadow, had painstakingly set this up for a long time. In the end, not only had they failed to obtain the time-fixing plate, their disciple had perished on the spot. It was truly a case of going for wool and coming home shorn. On the other side, Xiao Lifeng had been chasing after the Sword Seeker Pavilion Master, only giving up unwillingly when the latter had escaped back into the territory of the Sword Seeker Pavilion. His heart was heavy. All because of a single mistake, he had lost the entire game. At that moment, Xiao Lifeng received a message from Su Yu. Seeing the contents of the message, Xiao Lifeng was stunned for a moment. He then looked in the direction of the Sword Seeker Pavilion and could not help but laugh. That old man's expression must be worse than if he ate a dead person, right? Inside the Sword Seeker Pavilion, the Sword Seeker Pavilion Master, who had finally escaped from Xiao Lifeng, chuckled. Xiao Lifeng, let's see how you deal with this." Only then did he have the time to examine the space storage device. In the end, he could no longer laugh. There was no time-fixing plate, not even a blade of grass. After a moment of shock, he realized that he had been tricked. His face instantly flushed red and then turned ashen. He clenched his fists, the veins on his face contorting in anger. He looked exceptionally ferocious. "Little bastard, I will make sure you die a horrible death." In a rage, he returned to the Sword Seeker Pavilion. He had no time to deal with the administrative affairs of the Sword Seeker Pavilion that had accumulated over the past few months, so he hurried to the training grounds. Inside, a man sat cross-legged, his face full of weakness. That silhouette was exactly the same as Hunting Shadow. He was Hunting Shadow's body. "Inger, how are you?" However, the body, which had clearly lost its soul, opened its eyes, which were filled with hatred. "Terrible! I've lost a third of my soul." It turned out that Hunting Shadow was not the entirety of his soul, only a third. The Sword Seeker Pavilion Master's face turned pale, his hatred deepening. Hunting Shadow had lost so much of his soul, and his abilities had plummeted. He, who was almost certain that he could enter an 8-star civilization, was now uncertain. "Men, investigate all the information on that little bastard. I, the ghost teacher, swear that if I do not personally kill this person, I will be struck by lightning." The ghost teacher roared. Hunting Shadow creased his brows. At his master's level, it was better not to swear carelessly. Otherwise, he would be easily influenced by the will of the unseen world. If he did not succeed, it might really come true. "Let me do it." Hunting Shadow's eyes were filled with a cold intent. "When we meet again in the Glaze Ancient Cave, I hope he still dares to appear in front of me as a soul." On the other side, Suyu, who had obtained the time-fixing plate, immediately went into seclusion to use it. He took out the sinful lady's soul crystal and placed it in the center of the time-fixing plate. Then, he activated the time-fixing plate with his primordial force. With the influx of a large amount of energy, the time-fixing plate underwent an obvious change. The needle on the plate spun quickly, pausing every 10 minutes. When it paused, the needle would point to a symbol. Just like that, it paused 8 times in a row, pointing to 8 symbols. Those symbols represented various meanings. Suyu had learned about the meaning of each symbol from the intelligence of the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce. Soon, he translated the 8 symbols, and the result was a sentence. "Far away on the horizon, but close at hand." Seeing these 8 words, Suyu had an urge to destroy the time-fixing plate. Couldn't things like the sky inquiring well and the time-fixing plate explain things clearly? Far away on the horizon, but close at hand, it made him even more confused. Suyu could not understand the meaning of these words. The sky inquiring well had said very clearly that the sinful lady palace was in an 8-star civilization. But the time-fixing plate had said that it was both far away and close at the same time. "You're really playing with me." Suyu bared his teeth. After going around in a big circle, it turned out that the time-fixing plate had said nothing. "I really shouldn't have pinned my hopes on these things." Suyu sighed deeply. Of course, although he said that, he already had some confidence in his heart. At least he knew that he was not far from the sinful lady palace. Phew! Next, I can rest assured and train in the Glaze Ancient Cave ahead. I'm ready. Suyu took out all the treasures he had, preparing to count them or refine them again. After picking and choosing, most of the treasures were classified as giving up. There was only one treasure, and Suyu felt it was a pity to give it up. That was the Heavenly Law's Death Eye. As the Holy Mountain's heavenly sun, the eye of the nine-tailed fox, this Heavenly Law's Death Eye was filled with an extremely intense death domain. But for some reason, its power was very limited. Suyu had used 10,000 drops of ordinary Path Master's blood to activate it, and it could only kill one ordinary Path Master. At present, it was far from meeting his needs, so Suyu wanted to refine it again. Refining it meant changing part of the eye's power. After thinking about it, Su Yu took out the boundless karmic flame golden sword that he had just used. This sword had given birth to the boundless karmic flame, which had helped Su Yu a lot. However, Su Yu already had the royal dragon sword and the sinful sword, the two strongest swords. The grade of this sword was far from being able to keep up, and it was completely useless. It was better to strip off the boundless karmic flame and integrate it into this heavenly law's death eye. Without hesitation, Su Yu used his strong physique to forcefully crush the sword. Within the sword, a golden thunder flame the size of a broad bean flickered and extinguished. This was the boundless karmic flame. Su Yu carefully integrated the boundless karmic flame into the heavenly law's death eye. He had already expected that the integration process would not be smooth. After all, this eye came from the holy mountain's heavenly sun. Even though the owner of the eye had been dead for many years, it was still a taboo existence. Therefore, before the official start, he had made several defensive preparations to avoid being accidentally injured. When the boundless karmic flame fell on the heavenly law's death eye, a faint sound was heard. Su Yu only now discovered that there was a thin film on the surface of the eye that he had never noticed before. The thin film could not be seen clearly with any eye technique, and it could not even be felt when touched. It was only at this moment that the boundless karmic flame burned the thin film, and Su Yu was horrified. Could it be the heavenly law's death eye's self-protection? Su Yu had always been puzzled. The power of the heavenly law's death eye was not as strong as he had imagined. Now it seemed that this thin film had blocked most of the power. When the thin film was completely burned, the heavenly law's death eye radiated an unusually dazzling emerald light. The dim light was breathtaking, like the ruler of death, quietly watching him. Even Su Yu himself could not help but feel his heart skip a beat. What surprised Su Yu even more was that a pupil had been born on the heavenly law's death eye. Chapter 23-27. The death eye of the heavenly law that Su Yu had obtained used to be the 9-jade spiritual pearl. For a long time, he had used it purely as a space storage device. He had never thought that it would be a living thing. Being stared at by that pupil, Su Yu's hair stood on end, and his heart thumped wildly. At this moment, Su Yu felt as if he was looking into a bottomless abyss, and there was an eye in the abyss looking at him quietly. That kind of invisible panic spread to every corner of his soul, making him panic. Fortunately, the pupils turned slightly and shifted to another place. Only then did Su Yu's inner fear gradually dissipate, and his heart gradually relaxed. What a terrifying eye! Su Yu was secretly shocked. This was the real death eye of the heavenly law. The power of the death eye of the heavenly law that he had used in the past was probably not even a fraction of it. Su Yu's heart moved, and he tried to take out 10,000 drops of the Path Master's blood and inject them into the eye. The pupil turned again, and a layer of dark ripples spread deep in the pupil. It was this ripple that could destroy the enemy invisibly and kill ordinary Path Masters. No changes. Su Yu could not help but be disappointed. The real death eye of the heavenly law could not be activated by some Path Master's blood. However, at this moment, the black ripple was mixed with a faint golden thunder flame. It was the boundless karmic flame. However, it was much weaker than before. Because of the burning of the thin film, it had consumed a lot of energy. In the end, not only did it not strengthen the death eye of the heavenly law, but it also lost the power of the boundless karmic flame. Boom! All of a sudden, a deafening muffled thunder exploded for no reason. And it exploded precisely towards the cave where Su Yu was. The thunderous power contained in the muffled thunder was extremely terrifying, far more than any thunderbolt Su Yu had ever seen before. It was not a pure thunderbolt power, but a very high-level thunderbolt domain. Rumble! The thunder rumbled down, and the ancient seal above the palace that had been operating for 10,000 years could not withstand it at all, and was smashed on the spot. The thunder fell vertically and landed on the cave where Su Yu was. In an instant, the cave was reduced to ashes, leaving behind a huge bottomless abyss. The remaining thunder arcs swam in it, lingering for a long time. And Su Yu had long disappeared. Sensing the huge commotion, the monarch's expression changed drastically as he rushed over. What he saw made him shudder with fear. Is this an elemental level domain? The monarch stared at the remnant lightning bolts and took a deep breath. The same domain was divided into 4 levels according to its strength: beginner, middle, advanced, and yuan level. As one of the 3 powerhouses of the colored glaze civilization and one of the top powerhouses in the entire western region, the monarch's domain level was only at the intermediate level. Even the current heaven-defying dragon emperor of the powerful dragon clan civilization was only at the advanced realm. Yuan realm wasn't something that should exist in the outer realms. Moreover, to launch a domain from the outer realms, it had to traverse countless spaces. Who is the one who unleashed the Thunderbolt domain? The monarch was shocked. Concealing the shock in his heart, the monarch looked around and realized where the abyss was originally located. His heart skipped a beat, as if he had missed a beat. Su Yu! Su Yu! He shouted as he scanned the area. However, the only reply he got was the sizzling sound of the lightning arcs exploding. His heart sank. Even though he didn't want to believe it, he couldn't have survived the yuan level domain, let alone Su Yu. Even if Su Yu was proficient in the space domain, his domain was only at the beginner level. Under the yuan level domain, the beginner level domain couldn't withstand a single blow. There was no way Su Yu could have survived. What a pity! A genius of his generation died in the yuan level domain just like that. The monarch sighed, truly feeling sorry for Su Yu. Once a space domain expert matured, his future potential would be unimaginably terrifying. Swish, 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 numerous powerhouses hurried over. Among them were Xie Xiaoye, Wuxin Taiho, and Princess Qianyu. Father, what's going on? The muffled thunder just now must have alarmed half of the empire. There was no way Princess Qianyu didn't know about it. The monarch's eyes were filled with sorrow. Your teacher has passed away. Princess Qianyu blinked her eyes, feeling inexplicably relieved. It was as if the rock hanging over her heart had finally been lifted. On the other hand, Xie Xiaoye stared blankly at the remnant lightning arcs. Yuan level Thunderbolt domain. Strangely, she recognized the Thunderbolt. The monarch couldn't help but look at Xie Xiaoye strangely. He didn't expect this woman to recognize it. It is indeed an yuan level domain. Wuxin Taiho stood where he was with a complicated expression. Looking at the boundless abyss, he slowly said, "If the target of this domain was the colored glaze civilization, it would have been reduced to ashes by now." The monarch nodded his head lightly in agreement. The terror of an yuan-level domain couldn't be described with words. If one had to compare it, it was probably equivalent to a kick from the forbidden being that Xian Hua had encountered. Under such an attack, could Su Yu still survive? Impossible, right? Xie Xiaoye only regained her senses after a long while. Realizing that this was where Su Yu lived, her eyes lost focus. Shaking her head, she said, "This joke isn't funny at all. Why would an yuan-level domain appear, and why would the domain coincidentally attack Su Yu?" She didn't want to admit or accept this abnormally cruel reality. Wuxin Taiho sighed softly. "My condolences." A trace of sadness flashed across his eyes. She had once thought that she might have found someone who shared the same ideals. But now everyone had different feelings. Unbeknownst to them, in a faraway mountain, the sky was suddenly torn apart. Lightning bolts danced like wild snakes, shattering the mountains. In an instant, the world was a sea of fire. Bang! A huge cauldron suddenly fell from the torn sky, smashing into the ground and cracking it. The fire burned for a whole month. When the flames subsided, everything was charred. Only the cauldron was unscathed. Pop! Suddenly, the cauldron shook, and a person emerged from it. That person was none other than Su Yu. As the lightning descended, Su Yu's destiny law kept sending out intense warnings. In this critical situation, Su Yu took out the divine nine-dragon cauldron without hesitation and jumped into it to hide. At the same time, he activated the time law and the space domain, trying to move the divine nine-dragon cauldron to its original spot. In the end, the divine nine-dragon cauldron was still struck by the terrifying thunder domain. Fortunately, the divine nine-dragon cauldron was really indestructible, and it didn't suffer any damage. Under the influence of time and space, the divine nine-dragon cauldron and a portion of the remnant lightning arcs were moved to this place. Although he had escaped, Su Yu didn't feel good. The surface of his body was charred black, and his chest was charred. Many of his internal organs were damaged, and his life force was rapidly weakening. And all of this was because Su Yu had opened the 30-foot small world. Chapter 23-28. Even so, he was still unconscious in the divine nine-dragon cauldron for more than a month. This was something that had never happened before. What was that thunderbolt realm about? It seemed very powerful. Su Yu recalled the scene at that time, and he could not help but feel a lingering fear. He did not understand why the thunderbolt realm would suddenly appear without warning. Sizzle! As he was thinking, something in his palm made a strange sound. Su Yu looked down and was so shocked that he almost dropped the thing in his hand. He saw that in the pupil of the heavenly law's death eye, there was a tiny electric arc, the size of an embroidery needle, swimming. That lightning arc was none other than the remnant of the lightning domain from before. However, what was different was that the electric arc, which should have been pale white, was now showing a faint hint of gold. Not only did it not threaten Su Yu, but there was also a faint spiritual connection. Could it be? Su Yu's heart skipped a beat as an incredible thought popped into his mind. Boundless karmic flame, come out! He tried to communicate with it, and the electric arc of the embroidery needle flew out from the eyeball. It was as he had expected. The remnant electric arc merged with the boundless karmic flame and became something under Su Yu's control. Staring at the electric embroidery needle, Su Yu's heart was filled with joy. Although it was only the size of an embroidery needle, its power was bound to be earth-shattering. If it was used, even a path master like Xia Yan would probably be turned into ashes, and a path master like the monarch of the Empire of Nightless would be severely injured at the very least. If used properly, it could even kill him. Of course, the power of this electric arc would be greatly reduced after each use, and it might even dissipate immediately. Therefore, it had to be used at a critical moment. What an unexpected gain! Su Yu grinned. This grin tugged at the burnt muscles at the corners of Su Yu's mouth, and he could not help but grimace in pain. Hiss, let's heal my body first. Su Yu immediately used the law of life to quickly heal his severely burned body. Unexpectedly, when the life force entered his body, it was met with an unusually strong resistance. It devoured most of the life force, leaving only a small portion for Su Yu to heal. What's going on? He looked inside his body, and with a glance, his heart was in his throat again. His bloodline was filled with thunder and lightning. Lightning was not as powerful as the lightning domain, but it had the same aura as the lightning domain. It was obvious that these thunderbolts had been absorbed by Su Yu's body after he had been struck by the thunderbolt. The thunderbolts fused with his blood vessels and became a part of his body. He thought for a moment and tried to punch the air. As a result, a layer of flickering lightning arcs immediately appeared on the surface of his fist. When the lightning arc touched the outside world, it immediately tore the space apart. Su Yu was startled. The power of the lightning arcs wasn't weak, and any of the path masters at the level of family masters would be destroyed by the lightning on the spot if they were struck by it. Even people at Xia Yan's level had to be wary of him. It was conceivable that if Su Yu cooperated with the heavenly dragon Taoist body, the effect of the thunder arc would be maximized. Any random punch from him would be enough to make those experts suffer. Although it was dangerous this time, I still gained a lot, Su Yu thought to himself. Gazing at the heavenly law's eye of death in his palm, Su Yu felt that the thunderbolt had most likely been triggered by the burning of the membrane on the surface of the heavenly law's eye of death. However, whose domain did it belong to? An 8-star civilization. In a vast area of boundless darkness, ancient coffins were scattered all over the place. A gloomy atmosphere permeated the world. In the depths of the darkness there was no light. To be precise, there was some kind of existence that devoured all things that had light. Creak. Suddenly, the rough sound of chains rubbing against each other sounded without warning. It was followed by a dull murmur. I finally found it, the heavenly law's eye of death. The voice seemed to come from a box, and it was low and gloomy, making it sound even colder. The day of this demon master's freedom has arrived. Qin Wentian's eyes lit up. Boom. Suddenly, an extremely terrifying bolt of lightning appeared without any warning, illuminating the darkness for a brief moment. For a brief moment, a huge blood-red ancient coffin was firmly locked on a huge dragon skeleton by 18 iron chains. Then, the world fell into deep darkness again. Colored glaze civilization. At the border of the Nightless Empire, Su Yu transformed into his half-dragon body. However, compared to the golden dragon scales of the past, some of the scales were pale white. After several months, not only did he restore his body to its peak, but he also skillfully used the power of thunder absorbed in his body. Now he could turn them into scales and attach them to the surface of his body. Together with the sky dragon Taoism body, it could play an unexpected role. After the training, Su Yu was quite satisfied with his current body. He looked up in the direction of the Nightless Empire, then slowly turned around and walked towards the border of the Nightless Empire, the Palace of Light and the Sword-Seeking Pavilion. There was a city there named Liuli City. This city was jointly built by the 3 parties, and they all sent strong men from their respective forces to guard it. The purpose was to guard the largest ancient relic of the colored glaze civilization, the Glaze Ancient Cave. Calculating the time for the opening of the Glaze Ancient Cave was approaching. Su Yu did not want to miss out on all the rumors about it. A few days later, Liuli City. Su Yu hesitated for a while outside the city, then moved his bones slightly, making his body taller and larger. At the same time, a faint layer of thunder emerged on the surface of his body, wrapping his whole body in it. From the outside, Su Yu's true appearance could not be seen at all. Only then did he step into Liuli City. Unexpectedly, the city was unusually lively. There were many vendors coming and going, and there were all kinds of shops in the city. It turned out that because of the existence of the Glaze Ancient Cave, there were many more spiritual objects in the vicinity than in other places. For tens of millions of years, people often came here to search for treasures of heaven and earth. Over time, Liuli City became lively. Bang! Bang! As soon as he entered the city, Su Yu heard the sound of fierce fighting coming from the city, and he could faintly hear the cheers of the residents of Liuli City. Haha, Liuli City is finally going to be lively. The heaven rulers of the 3 great forces have all entered the city. Look, they've only been here for a few days, and they're already beaten to a pulp. How exciting! The most pitiful is the representative of the Nightless Empire. How miserable! Su Yu heard this and did not want to pay attention. He really did not want to care about the group of people from the Nightless Temple of the Nightless Empire. But then he realized that something was wrong. The Nightless Temple had been suppressed, so how could they still be here as a representative? Curious, Su Yu walked over to take a look. He found a man and a woman fighting each other. Su Yu did not know the man, but his domain was somewhat dark, similar to that of the master of the Sword-Seeking Pavilion. His identity was undoubtedly that of the Sword-Seeking Pavilion. As for the other woman, Su Yu did not even have the interest to look at her. He turned and left. Chapter 23-29. Thud. As he turned around, he heard a dull thud behind him, followed by a pitiful groan. Sword Seeker Pavilion, you are all crazy. There were not many women who could make Su Yu fall in love with them, and Princess Qianyue was one of them. Princess Qianyue was furious. Ever since she had arrived in Liuli City, the people of the Sword Seeker Pavilion had been looking for trouble like mad dogs. 5 people, including Guangming, had already been provoked and injured by the people of the Sword Seeker Pavilion. It was the same for Princess Qianyue. Because no one wanted to see her, she had wandered around Liuli City alone. She had found a rare spiritual item and was about to buy it when the people of the Sword Seeker Pavilion suddenly appeared. The elite who was ranked 4th in the sword-seeking pavilion had stepped in and smashed the spiritual item into smithereens. That was fine, but the shop owner had demanded compensation from Princess Qianyue. This was because the shop had been opened by the people of the Sword Seeker Pavilion. With Princess Qianyue's temper, how could she take this lying down? She immediately started arguing, and the argument became more and more intense until it turned into a fight. However, she did not consider that the purpose of the other party's provocation was to find a legitimate reason to attack her. In the end, the young man from the Sword Seeker Pavilion attacked with a talisman that he had prepared for a long time, injuring Princess Qianyue on the spot and preventing her from using her 9 divine body. The result was obvious. Princess Qianyue was sent flying by the other party's palm, but she crashed right into Su Yu. Su Yu did not even turn his head. He casually slapped his palm behind him, using just the right amount of force to dissolve the energy on Princess Qianyue's body. Only then did Princess Qianyue slow down and not crash into Su Yu. Then, Su Yu grabbed Princess Qianyue with his right arm. Princess Qianyue was being bullied and was extremely grateful to be saved. Looking at the tall, imposing man in front of her, who was covered in lightning, Princess Qianyue felt a little strange. Thank you. Princess Qianyue was slightly embarrassed to be hugged by the man of lightning. Her fair cheeks flushed slightly as she thanked him in a low voice. Su Yu was stunned. He did not expect Princess Qianyue to have such an expression. It was the complete opposite of her unruly personality. However, Su Yu was stunned for a moment, and Princess Qianyue mistakenly thought that he was looking at her affectionately. Her face turned even redder. Su Yu was confused. He put her down expressionlessly and turned to leave. Yo! What a hero saving the damsel in distress, tsk. Unexpectedly, the young man from the Sikh Sword Pavilion had a cold expression on his face. But you should find out who I am and whether you deserve to be called a hero. Su Yu did not like Princess Qianyue, but he hated the sword-seeking pavilion even more. Get lost. If he wanted to provoke him, Su Yu would let him have his way. The young man was obviously startled. He hadn't even said anything, but he was already scolded to get lost. At this moment, he felt that he wasn't the one provoking this person, but this person provoking him. Fine, I told you to get lost. The young man's face turned cold, and he threw out a powerful talisman paper. There were 4 beast heads carved on the talisman paper. Each of them was baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. Be careful. Don't let the talisman paper touch you. Otherwise, your strength will be sealed, and you will be at the mercy of others. Princess Qianyue reminded. She had suffered a loss just now. However, it was too late for him to warn Su Yu. The talisman exploded, and a few beast heads emerged from it, biting Su Yu fiercely. Princess Qianyue cried out in alarm, but there was nothing she could do. She could only think to herself, it's over. The young man laughed maniacally. He had already seen Su Yu's body bound by the beast heads. He took a step forward, laughing coldly as he attacked Su Yu, who was about to be bound. However, the next moment, the young man's soul almost left his body. Su Yu did not even move. The lightning fox on the surface of his body flickered, and the 4 powerful beast heads turned into black smoke with a puff. The young man's heart was in turmoil. Those were no ordinary beast heads. They were personally crafted by the Pavilion Master, and they contained the Pavilion Master's unique middle-level domain. Although it was very weak, other than the Bright Palace Master and the monarch of the Nightless Empire, who else could take it lightly? Who was this Thunder Man in front of him? However, the young man didn't have time to think. He was charging toward Su Yu like a meteor. He had thought that Su Yu would be bound, so he had used all his strength. Now, he couldn't even hold back his strength. Seeing that there was no way to escape, the young man clenched his teeth, braced himself, and attacked Su Yu. Puff, his luck didn't work. Just like the 4 beast heads from before, they didn't even have the chance to struggle before they were destroyed by the mysterious, terrifying thunder. The sword-seeking pavilion's shopkeeper's face turned pale, and he screamed, "You killed Gui Sha." Gui Sha was the 4th-ranked heaven ruler of the sword-seeking pavilion. He was favored by the sword-seeking pavilion. The Pavilion Master would not let him off easily if he died just like that. Su Yu shook off the dust on his body, calmly saying, "You have to be responsible for your words. Did you see me attack? He knocked into me and killed himself. How can you blame me for that?" Shaking his head, Su Yu walked away without turning his head back. "Tell your Pavilion Master that, old man, if he wants revenge, he can come anytime. I will make sure he never returns." Hearing this, the onlookers were in an uproar. He actually dared to challenge the Pavilion Master of the sword-seeking pavilion? That was one of the 3 great super fighters of the colored glaze civilization. The crowd looked at Su Yu's departing figure, shocked beyond words. Princess Qian Yu's eyes glowed. She felt that a man should live like this, fearless and invincible. After Su Yu left, he searched around the city and found the Nightless Empire's encampment. The Palace of Light was nearby, and both parties had formed an alliance. Su Yu came to a secluded corner, removed his disguise, and walked into a luxurious inn. He had wanted to ask the waiter where the people of the Nightless Empire were, but he heard a familiar voice. Looking to the side, he saw Princess Qian Yu in a private room, excitedly recounting what had happened just now. Even her face was flushed with excitement as she spoke of the impressive part. Xian Hua, Xie Xiaoye, and the heartless Iron Constable were all present. "Drink some water first." Xie Xiaoye stopped Princess Qian Yu from continuing. In the past hour, Princess Qian Yu had already told her story 3 times. She was tired of hearing it. Xian Hua had a look of doubt, but said, "It's not that I don't believe you, but that Gui Sha's abilities are quite good, second only to mine. You said that he was turned to dust when he collided with the person covered in lightning. That is hard to believe. If that was really the case, how terrifying would the lightning person be?" At this moment, the heartless Iron Constable looked at Princess Qian Yu, nodding. "I feel that the princess is not lying." She could tell with a glance whether a person was lying or not. But if that was really the case, how terrifying would the lightning person be? Also, Princess Qian Yu lowered her head shyly. "He seems to be interested in me." Ugh! Su Yu, who heard this from outside, felt a chill run down his spine. She could be interested in anyone but Princess Qian Yu. He was outside, typing on his cell phone, so it was very slow. Chapter 23:30. Should he say that Princess Qian Yu thought too highly of herself, or that Su Yu was insensitive? In any case, Su Yu did not sense any mutual admiration between them. This Princess Qian Yu does not know what's good for her. Su Yu had saved her twice. The first time, she had reprimanded Su Yu for being a busybody. The second time, Wuxin had saved him, but she had inexplicably admired him. He had saved her again, but the result was completely different. The reason was that Su Yu's strength had not shocked her the first time, but the second time had changed her mind. She had fallen in love with a stranger just because he was powerful. What if this stranger had evil intentions? Su Yu's eyes were filled with disappointment. Princess Qian Yu was beyond saving. At that moment, their conversation could be heard in the room again. The Wuxin Iron Constable reminded Princess Qianyue, in this world, the one who saves you is not necessarily a good person, and the one who pushes you into the fire pit is not necessarily a bad person. Her words had a double meaning, referring to both the Thunder Man and Su Yu. Xie Xiaoye added, the human heart is unpredictable. He merely helped you neutralize a palm strike. Don't take it to heart. Hearing that, Princess Qianyue was indignant. She thought to herself that the two of them must be envious of her. Yes, everyone looks like a bad person, only Su Yu is a good person, right? Princess Qianyue mocked. Unfortunately, he was struck dead by lightning. I wonder how many good deeds he had done to be struck by lightning. Hearing that, Xie Xiaoye glared at her. Watch your tone. Su Yu's unexpected death had always been a source of grief for Xie Xiaoye. A good person had left just like that. The world was unpredictable. Who could be with whom forever? Princess Qianyue's disrespect made him feel particularly disgusted, and his eyes shone with a cold light. The Wuxin Iron Constable looked at her calmly. As your former teacher, it is better to show some respect. Without him, you would not be where you are now. The Wuxin Iron Constable also felt it was a great pity for Su Yu to leave. Princess Qianyue's words and actions were truly intolerable. My achievements were earned through my own hard work. What does that have to do with him? Princess Qianyue had always been fearless. Now that Su Yu was not around, she was even more unbridled. She pointed to herself. The 9 divine body is something I was born with. It has nothing to do with Su Yu. She was getting more and more out. Xie Xiaoye slammed the table and stood up, scolding angrily. You ungrateful thing! The body of 9 gods is yours, but without Su Yu taking the risk to train with you all day long, do you think it would have such power today? Hasn't it been a few months? Without his help, has your body of 9 gods improved? Xie Xiaoye felt deeply sorry for Su Yu. He had put in so much effort, only to receive Princess Qianyue's complete denial. She finally understood why Su Yu had terminated their teacher-student relationship. It was because Su Yu had seen through Princess Qianyue's character. Selfish, narrow-minded, and short-sighted, trampling on the help of others. Princess Qianyue's sore spot had been touched. Indeed, he didn't feel it before. However, after Su Yu left, no one sharpened his 9 divine body, and its power remained at its previous level. But how could she admit this? Don't use such high-sounding words to accuse me. Don't think that I don't know that you and Su Yu have been together for a long time. You are so beautiful, would he be so kind as to save you from the Palace of Light? I advise you to find another reliable man. Don't hang on to Su Yu, that dead tree. Her unscrupulous, mocking tone finally infuriated Xie Xiaoye. Bang! Xie Xiaoye flipped over the table, her murderous intent swirling. I rarely kill people, but I have no qualms about killing a woman like you. She used to be a pirate. Why would she be afraid of killing a princess? At most, she would return to being a pirate after being hunted down. Princess Qianyu was not afraid. Who's afraid of you? Her body of 9 gods had been sharpened by Su Yu, and it was no longer what it used to be. She was not afraid of Xie Xiaoye. It had to be said that Princess Qianyu was heartless. She enjoyed the increase in power that Su Yu had brought, but at the same time, she was critical and looked down on Su Yu. Slap! A resounding slap landed on her face. It was not Xie Xiaoye who had slapped her, but Wuxin Taiho. Her eyes were filled with mild disgust. I rarely hate someone, but you are one of the few. You do not know how to be grateful, and you even speculate about Su Yu with the worst of intentions. A person like you is not worthy of being his student. If Su Yu was really a lustful person, he would have attacked her long ago. But he did not, and even found an excuse to let her go. Would such a person lust after Xie Xiaoye's beauty? Princess Qianyu was caught off guard by the slap. She covered her left cheek and glared at Wuxin Taiho. How dare you hit me? No one had ever hit her since she was young. Wuxin Taiho calmly said, So what if I hit you? If your father knew, he would only say that I hit you well. Indeed, Wuxin Tai Ho was a proud lady that the monarch had gone to great lengths to invite to represent the Knightless Empire in the selection of the 8-star civilizations. For this, the monarch often lamented his good luck. How could the monarch dare to blame Wuxin Tai Ho at such a critical juncture? Princess Qian Yu stared at Wuxin Tai Ho. You also protect Su Yu. I'm afraid there must be something going on between the two of you, right? Slap. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew past, followed by a sharp and resounding slap on her other right cheek. But the person who had slapped her was not Wuxin Tai Ho, nor was it Xie Xiaoye. It was Su Yu. Who hit me? Princess Qian Yu screamed in anger. She had already gone mad. To be slapped repeatedly by someone was the greatest humiliation of her life. But when she looked at the person who had slapped her, her anger froze as if it had encountered an ancient chill. Her expression also froze as she looked at the silver-haired figure in front of her, motionless. Su! Teacher Su! Princess Qian Yu, who had bared her fangs and brandished her claws, was now like a cat, stammering. Su Yu looked at her calmly, his eyes unwavering. Didn't I say that I am no longer your teacher? Princess Qian Yu finally understood. Yes, a year had passed. According to their agreement, Su Yu would only be her teacher for a year. If that was the case, why should she be afraid of him? I slapped you, not for me, but for them. Su Yu did not mind Princess Qian Yu's insults, but he could not ignore her slander of Xie Xiaoye and Wuxin Tai Ho. Wuxin Tai Ho had slapped Xie Xiaoye. Wuxin Tai Ho had slapped Wuxin Tai Ho. Princess Qian Yu lowered her head, her eyes filled with hatred. What right did he have to slap me? You are no longer my teacher. Su Yu seemed to be able to read her thoughts. If you are not satisfied, you can look for your father. He waved his sleeves, using a wisp of space energy to throw her out. He then turned around, smiling at the two girls. I have made you worry. The two girls were looking at him in shock and disbelief. They could not believe that Su Yu had appeared in front of them alive. How could he have survived under the Yuanshe realm? Theoretically, if the Yuanshe realm had been dispersed, the entire colored glaze civilization would have been destroyed. All the realms had attacked Su Yu's residence. How could he have escaped unscathed? But Su Yu had indeed appeared in front of them. The two girls came back to their senses, their faces filled with joy. Wuxin Tai Ho only smiled lightly, revealing his joy. Compared to her introverted nature, Xie Xiaoye was much more open. She walked forward in surprise and tugged on Su Yu's sleeves, sizing him up from head to toe. Tears of joy formed in his eyes due to the pleasant surprise. This is great, this is great. She was so excited that she could not speak coherently. She did not even know what she was saying. Su Yu patted her shoulder comfortingly. I am back. He sighed in his heart. That sudden calamity seemed to be a good fortune at the moment. Not only did he gain a lot, but he had also verified the attitudes of some people. He did not dare to say the same about others, but Xie Xiaoye was worthy of Su Yu's sincere treatment. Not long after, news of Su Yu's survival spread like wildfire. Swoosh, the monarch was the first to rush over. He stared at Su Yu in disbelief, as if he was looking at a monster. Unbelievable! You're still alive. The monarch was surprised and overjoyed, as if he had just found something he had lost. Su Yu smiled indifferently. I have made you worry. Haha, today is a day worthy of celebration. Come, let me welcome you. The monarch threw a banquet. It was clear that he was in a good mood. Now is not the time to be distracted. The sword-seeking pavilion is so aggressive. Did you and the Palace Master of Light not take any measures? They could not allow the Sleepless Empire and the Palace of Light to remain passive, could they? The monarch's face was solemn. He had heard about Princess Qian Yu being humiliated by Gui Sha on the street. How could he not be angry? Sigh. You may not know, but I, the Palace Master of Light, and the sword-seeking pavilion master reached a consensus when Liuli City was first established. Within Liuli City, we three Dowlords and the Fish Dragon Realm Dowlord are not allowed to fight in Liuli City, lest we become too strong and affect the glazed ancient cave below the city, resulting in irreparable damage. The so-called Fish Dragon Realm should be the path masters of Xiaoyan's level. The monarch and the other two were even above the Fish Dragon Realm. Knowing this, Su Yu understood a little. But are the younger generation of our two factions no match for the other party? Su Yu asked. The Palace of Light had Xianhua, and the Sleepless Empire had the Heartless Iron Arrestor, Xie Xiaoye, and the others as representatives. If they join forces, they should not be suppressed by the sword-seeking pavilion. Hearing this, the monarch sighed deeply. If Liuli City could attack for no reason, how could the sword-seeking pavilion be so arrogant? Su Yu finally understood the real reason. The sword-seeking pavilion was good at using tricks and provocations to attack. Because it was often premeditated, the people from the sword-seeking pavilion who attacked were sure to succeed. On the other hand, the people from the Palace of Light and the Sleepless Empire disdained using tricks, but those who wanted to use tricks could not defeat the other party. Serves you right to be bullied. Su Yu was unconcerned. The quality of a strategy depended on the person using it. If they were too fixated on reputation and hesitated, then they deserved to be taken advantage of. Chapter 23:31. To settle this once and for all, let me do it, Su Yu said calmly. Instead of being constantly provoked by the sword-seeker pavilion and affecting his preparations for the Glaze Ancient Cave, he might as well make a move personally and cause some trouble for the sword-seeker pavilion so that they would not have the time to cause trouble again. Moreover, he had already offended the swordsmanship-seeking pavilion, so there was nothing to be afraid of. You want to fight? Xie Xiaoye's eyes shone brightly. Based on her understanding of Su Yu, he would either not attack, or once he did, it would be like a whirlwind sweeping away fallen leaves. It was cruel and heartless. She herself was an excellent example. Su Yu had gotten the entire pirate alliance into his hands without making any noise. As the number one person in the pirate alliance, she had almost become a prisoner. Do you mind having a fly by your ear? Su Yu asked. Xie Xiaoye giggled. Ha ha ha, the sword-seeking pavilion is in trouble. It was as if she could already see the people from the swordsmanship-seeking pavilion being badly battered. However, the monarch and the Wuxin Iron Arrestor did not know Su Yu very well. They did not understand where Su Yu's confidence came from, nor did they understand where Xie Xiaoye's gloating expression came from. Spread the news that I came back alive, Su Yu said. He already had a complete plan in mind. Hearing that, Xie Xiaoye creased her brows. She had thought that Su Yu would act in secret. If he announced that he had returned alive, wouldn't that be exposing himself in front of everyone? With the feud between Su Yu and the Sword-Seeker Pavilion, the Sword-Seeker Pavilion would attack him immediately. Would there be any room for Su Yu to attack? However, she did not question anything. Su Yu must have his own reasons for doing so. However, the monarch tried to persuade him. Young Master Su, please don't reveal yourself for the time being. Su Yu had killed the soul of his beloved disciple, Hunting Shadow, right in front of the Sword-Seeker Pavilion Master. How could they let such a deep hatred go? Su Yu had been killed by the Heavenly Thunder, and they had no way to pursue the matter. If he knew that Su Yu was still alive, he would definitely kill him. The monarch was a little confused. Su Yu shouldn't be such a reckless person. How could he be so muddle-headed? Thank you for your concern, but I have my own considerations, Su Yu said. The monarch pondered for a while and sighed. All right, be careful. Not only did the Sikh Sword Pavilion have people all over Liuli City, but so did the Nightless Empire. Through the channels of the Sleepless Empire, the news that Su Yu had survived the calamity and returned alive swept through the entire Liuli City. At that moment, in a villa controlled by the Sword-Seeking Pavilion, 7 shadowy figures were sitting around in a dark corner of the villa. Just like how the Palace of Light had its emissary of light, and the Nightless Empire had its Nightless Temple, the swordsmanship-seeking pavilion also had a faction formed by Heaven's Chosen, called the Nine Swords Pavilion. There were only 9 people in the pavilion every year, and all of them were the top geniuses of the swordsmanship-seeking pavilion. The current leader of the Nine-Sword Pavilion was naturally hunting shadow. Guisha, who had been killed by Su Yu previously, was a member of the Nine Swords Cabinet, who was ranked 4th. Now, apart from the mysterious hunting shadow, the other 7 members were all here. You still haven't found out who the Lightning Man is? Ghost Eye, who was ranked 2nd, asked sinisterly. Just like its name, Ghost Eye's entire body was like a giant eye. It floated in the air and communicated on the spiritual level. It was said that Ghost Eye's main body had been destroyed in an accident many years ago. Therefore, all that was left of it was a lump of soul. Even so, its soul was still extremely powerful. With just its soul body, it had remained the 2nd strongest member of the Nine Swords Cabinet. No one had been able to contend against it. No. We mobilized our spies in the Sleepless Empire and the Palace of Light, but there was no trace of him. It was as if he had appeared out of thin air. The 3rd-ranked member of the Nine Swords Cabinet shook his head and muttered. Among the strong fighters of the colored glaze civilization, there were only a few who were adept at lightning. But there was not a single person who had trained their bodies to such a frightening level. Could there be a mistake in the information? Just by colliding with him, he was turned into ashes by the lightning arcs emitted from his body? Isn't that too unrealistic? The 5th-ranked member of the Nine Swords Cabinet said. They were very clear about Guisha's abilities. With his physique, only a Path Master at the Fish Dragon realm or above could destroy him with a single blow. Could that Lightning Man be such a strong fighter? No, I personally went to the scene to check. Guisha was indeed turned into ashes. The last member of the Nine Swords Cabinet had a look of fear that could not be erased. The atmosphere in the secret chamber suddenly became much more solemn. The Glaze Ancient Cave had not even begun, and they had already lost a capable fighter. How could they be happy? Perhaps it was someone from another civilization other than the 9 great 7-star civilizations, Gui Yen said with uncertainty. The other 6 nodded slightly. That was the only explanation. The Colored Glaze civilization was only one of the 9 strongest 7-star civilizations in the West region. The Lightning Man could very well have come from another 8 civilizations. Guisha can only blame his bad luck for inadvertently offending a passing expert. Just as everyone was accepting their fate, a beeping sound suddenly came from Gui Yan's body. Looking down, he saw that it was a message from his communication jade. After reading it, Gui Yan's giant eyes immediately shot out an unusually fierce cold light. The cold light was so intense that everyone present shuddered. Brother Gui Yan, what happened? Gui Yan laughed coldly. I received a piece of good news that could be considered bad news. What do you mean? The crowd did not understand what he meant. That person called Su Yu, he did not die. The people of the Sword Seeker Pavilion received the news and immediately sent it to the Sword Seeker Pavilion Master, followed by the Nine Swords Cabinet. What? He did not die? The crowd was shocked. They had heard that the one who attacked Su Yu was a Yuan-level realm expert. If he could survive, what was his life made of, for it to be so tough? But what followed was their intense excitement and murderous intent. They finally understood why Gui Yan had said that this was good news that could be considered bad news. The bad news was that Su Yu did not die. The good news was that Su Yu could die at their hands. Now that Su Yu had made enemies with the entire Sword Seeker Pavilion, everyone wanted to kill him. He had died under the lightning, and they could not do anything about it. Now that he was not dead, wasn't this giving them a chance to kill him? Inform Big Brother Hunting Shadow to come out of seclusion immediately. We'll pay him a visit together and annihilate him openly with a plan, someone suggested and prepared to send a message to Hunting Shadow on the spot. Wait! Gui Yin said calmly. Hunting Shadow lost a lump of his soul and is in the process of recovering. Remember not to disturb him. Only then did they extinguish the thought of searching for Hunting Shadow. The 7 of us working together to deal with Su Yu is more than enough, Gui Yin said confidently. The other 6 were convinced, not doubting him. This was because the schemes against the Palace of Light and the Sleepless Empire had all been planned by Gui Yin, and they had all succeeded without exception. We will listen to Brother Gui Yin, please give us your instructions. In their minds, Gui Yin would definitely ask them to find a way to lure Su Yu out, then provoke him to attack first. Then, they would find a reasonable reason to kill him. Unexpectedly, Gui Yin calmly said, First, we need to understand that this is a trap. Everyone present was stunned. A trap? Brother Gui Yin, what do you mean it is a trap? Ghost Eye's eyes were filled with shrewdness. Judging from how Su Yu hid himself so well, he must be an extremely cunning person. How could such a person so easily expose his whereabouts and let our people know about him? He had seen through Su Yu's intentions at a glance. The people of the Sword Seeker Pavilion are not good at gathering information, Gui Yin said slowly. Even so, we received the news at the first instant. If I am not mistaken, this news was deliberately spread by them. Everyone suddenly understood. Brother Gui Yin is wise, I admire you. That makes sense. Haha, if Su Yu wants to compete with our brother Gui Yin in a battle of wits, I'm afraid he is nothing. Then, Brother Gui Yin, what should we do now? Gui Yin sneered. Of course, we should go with the flow and give Su Yu a huge surprise. A huge surprise? Didn't he want to lure us to seek revenge? Then, let's do as he wishes. Gui Yan's voice gradually became softer, and he used telepathy to inform the 6 people of his specific plan. After a while, black shadows flashed in the secret room, and everyone left, arriving at the lodging of the Sleepless Empire. The people led by Gui Yin were hidden in the dark. After a long time, a servant walked out of the inn stealthily, nodding and bowing as he came before them. Greetings, Gui Yin and the members of the 9 Swords Pavilion. This waiter was the spy they had planted in the inn. Many of their previous plans had only succeeded because of the intelligence provided by this servant. How is it? Is Su Yu in his room? Gui Yin asked. The waiter shook his head and said, Lord Gui Yan's prediction is accurate. Su Yu left the inn 2 hours ago. Now, Xianhua, Wuxin Tai Constable, Xie Xiaoye, and the others are lying in ambush at his residence. Once you barge in, they will have a legitimate reason to attack you. Hearing this, the 6 members of the 9 Swords Pavilion were convinced. This is amazing, just as Brother Gui Yin predicted. This is indeed a conspiracy. Luckily, we have Brother Gui Yin. Otherwise, we would have been killed by Su Yu. Su Yu is really sinister. But luckily, we have Brother Gui Yin. The people flattered him. Gui Yin said calmly, If that is the case, let's give Su Yu a surprise. Where is he going now? The servant said awkwardly, I don't know, but I think he is hiding in some secret place, waiting to watch the show. Haha, then let's give him a good show, Gui Yin said. Spread the news that the 9 Swords Pavilion came to seek revenge on Su Yu, but we were jointly suppressed by the Bright Palace and the Sleepless Empire, suffering heavy casualties. Since Su Yu was hiding in the dark, he must have been paying close attention to the intelligence. Once he knew that the plan had succeeded, he would naturally come back to take a look. And once he came back, they would give him a surprise attack, one that Su Yu would never forget. The people of the sword-seeking pavilion quickly spread the news. For Liuli City, which was not huge, news spread quickly, especially such shocking news. Su Yu, who had secretly received the news, came back as if relieved of a heavy burden. He came to the front of the inn with a smile on his face, a hint of pride on his face. Chapter 23:32. Little did he know that he had fallen into the trap of the Sword Seeker Pavilion and the others. Ghost Eye and the others hid in the dark and looked at Su Yu, who had returned to investigate the situation as expected. They sneered. "How dare you compete with our big brother Ghost Eye with such a trick? Haha, the fish has finally taken the bait." Ghost Eye smiled deeply and said, "Brothers, what are you waiting for?" Whoosh, whoosh. The 7 of them appeared from the dark with a sneer on their faces. They were prepared to block a direction. It would be very difficult for Su Yu to escape in an instant. Su Yu was caught off guard as he was blocked by them. A trace of panic flashed across his face. "Su, you didn't expect this, did you?" The third-ranked member of the 9 Swords Pavilion sneered. "There is always someone better than you. If you want to scheme against us, why don't you weigh yourself first and see how capable you are?" Ghost Eye said calmly, "Su Yu, we suspect that you have stolen our things. Please cooperate with us to check your storage space." This was, of course, a provocation to Su Yu. If Su Yu did not agree, they could use this as an excuse to attack him. If he agreed, they could use another reason to attack him. No matter what, Su Yu would not be spared today. "Humph, if you want to catch me, it depends on your ability." After a moment of panic, Su Yu immediately used the power of space and rushed out of their encirclement. Ghost Eye was slightly surprised. This person is also proficient in the Space Divine technique? But before he could be surprised, Ghost Eye immediately led his people to chase after him. Chase. The 2 sides chased each other out of Liuli City and arrived at an abandoned manor on the outskirts. The manor was eerie and devoid of human habitation. The strangest thing was that after Su Yu sneaked into the manor, he seemed to have disappeared from the world. No matter how they searched, they could not find any trace of Su Yu. "Where is Su Yu?" Ghost Eye was surprised. They had clearly sensed that Su Yu had entered the manor, so why could they not find him? "Lock this place down. Find Su Yu even if you have to dig 3 feet into the ground." Unbeknownst to them, under the cover of nothingness, Su Yu was quietly leaving the manor and returning to a quiet and secluded courtyard in Liuli City. This courtyard seemed to be no different from the outside world, but in fact it was secretly surrounded by experts. It was difficult for even a fly to fly in. In the yard, Su Yu entered silently under the cover of the power of nothingness. Then, he entered a secret room in the courtyard without batting an eyelid. After entering, the power of nothingness around Su Yu dispersed, and the small Kylan's figure appeared. "I don't have much power of nothingness left. Use it sparingly." Ever since the little Qilin had evolved, most of the void force in its body had evolved into chaotic force. Only a small amount remained, so it could only be used once. Su Yu nodded and a faint smile appeared on his face. "It's enough." He looked at the center of the secret room, where a person who looked exactly like him was sitting cross-legged. To be precise, Su Yu's soul had left his body, and his real body had always been in the secret chamber. Schwa, as his soul returned to his body, Su Yu revealed a knowing smile. This courtyard was the courtyard of the great palace lord of the Light Palace. 2 hours ago, he came to the courtyard to pay a visit to the Grand Palace Master. If it had been someone else, the Great Palace Master wouldn't have bothered to meet them. However, Su Yu was the second person in the recent era to receive the Divine Deer's teachings. The Great Palace Master had wanted to meet Su Yu for a long time. Knock, knock. There was a knock on the door of the secret chamber. Su Yu stood up, opened the door, and saw a graceful and beautiful middle-aged woman standing outside. She looked like a blossoming peony. She was one of the 3 super-strong people of the Colored Glaze civilization, the Great Palace Master of the Light Palace. When he first met her, Su Yu didn't expect the Great Palace Master to be so beautiful. He only knew that the Great Palace Master was a woman. "Mr. Su, do you have any clues?" The Great Palace Master stared at Su Yu, her eyes filled with indescribable eagerness. 2 hours ago, Su Yu suddenly came to visit, saying that he was here to return the time-fixing plate on the orders of the King of the Nightless Empire. She was naturally happy to meet Su Yu. She also wanted to see how the mysterious person who had received the teachings of the light divine deer would be like. Suyu, who had turned the divine deer's teachings upside down and crushed almost all the light emissaries under his feet, was rejected on the spot. Therefore, she immediately met him. Judging from the way he talked, Suyu was indeed extraordinary. In terms of strength, the great palace master could vaguely see that Suyu was still hiding something. She especially felt a faintly discernible threat from him, which made her, who was one of the 3 super strong people of the colored glaze civilization, feel slightly uneasy. The two of them talked for a long time. In the end, the great palace master couldn't help but ask about the divine deer. She was eager to know whether Suyu had something special that could make the divine deer impart its teachings to him. In fact, she didn't have much hope. Perhaps Suyu didn't understand why the divine deer imparted its teachings to him. Even if he knew, why would he tell her? Unexpectedly, Suyu didn't deny it immediately. Instead, he said that he had some clues, but needed to sort them out. Thus, the great palace master generously let Suyu use her training room so that he could think about it in peace. 2 hours passed, and she really hoped to hear Suyu's answer. Suyu frowned and said thoughtfully, "Great palace master, my knowledge is limited. If it's not the answer you want, please don't blame me." The great palace master's voice was mellow and gentle. "Mr. Su, you've already done your best by telling me about it. So, how could I blame you?" Suyu nodded and said, "To tell you the truth, I once met an old Taoist who was sweeping the snow on the border of the 2 countries. I don't know his name. I think the reason why the divine deer imparted its teachings to me is probably related to this person." Old Taoist? The great palace master's phoenix eyes were deep in thought. Was he alone? There was also a tombstone with 3 words carved on it. The great palace master asked, "Which 3 words?" Zhuo Tianran. Unexpectedly, the great palace master's pupils contracted. She took a step forward and held Suyu's arms. Subconsciously, she exerted a lot of force, causing the thunderbolts in Suyu's body to shoot out involuntarily. An intense pain was transmitted from Suyu's arms to his soul. The great palace master's expression was now wide open, and her jade-like face was trembling slightly as she stared at Suyu. She didn't have the calmness and composure of the great palace master of the bright palace at all. Suyu knew that the old Taoist was no ordinary person, just as he had guessed. "Great palace master, please don't get agitated." It was only with this reminder that the great palace master realized that he had lost control of himself. He quickly withdrew his hands and apologized. "I'm sorry, I lost control of myself. Mr. Su, can you tell me where that old Taoist is?" Suyu shook his head and said, "I've already sent someone to the building." He then told the great palace master everything that had happened. After listening to him, the great palace master looked at the distant horizon and heaved a long sigh. It was fate. It turns out that he has always been in the colored glaze civilization. We've been searching for him for so many years in vain. Suyu's heart thumped. "May I ask, great palace master, who is that old Taoist? Didn't you see his name?" The great palace master turned around and looked at Suyu as he spoke softly. "He saw it?" Suyu was surprised. "Is the name on the tombstone the old Taoist's name?" "Yes," the great palace master said. Suyu was stunned. He didn't expect that someone would set up a tombstone for himself. That old Taoist is really no ordinary person. Is this person special? Is he the divine deer's master? Suyu made a guess. The great palace master hesitated for a moment, then replied honestly, "Yes, but that's not all. He is the founder of the colored glaze civilization, a person who has lived from the previous era to the current era." Suyu's heart was calm, and he didn't find it strange at all. This was the only way to explain all of his mysteries. "You don't seem surprised?" The great palace master was slightly surprised as he observed Suyu's expression. Anyone would be surprised if they knew that they had met an ancient venerable who had lived for 2 eras. There weren't many people who were as calm as Suyu. Suyu certainly wasn't surprised, as he had just swallowed the soul of an old monster from the previous era, which was the remnant soul of the human demon. Anything can happen at the end of the era, Suyu said calmly. Looking at the sky, Suyu cupped his fists and said, "That's all I know. I've told you everything, so I'll take my leave now." The Great Palace Master nodded slowly. "As a token of my gratitude, I'll give you something." She reached into her spatial storage world, and was about to take something out. However, at this moment, she discovered that several important treasures were missing from her spatial storage world. One of them was a treasure that was comparable to the time-fixing compass. Who trespassed into my spatial storage world and stole my treasures? The Great Palace Master's aura changed from gentleness to extreme fierceness. The strong wind that was set off around her was strong enough to crush a path master at the level of a family master. Great Palace Master. What happened? Outside the small courtyard, the 4 Fish Dragon Realm Pathmasters, who were guarding the Great Palace Master, appeared one after another and asked in surprise. The Great Palace Master squinted and looked around. When she glanced at Suyu, she paused for a moment. Before Suyu came, there was nothing unusual in her spatial storage world. Could it be him? However, Suyu had been right under her nose all this time, trying to steal her things right in front of her. Did he think she was blind? Therefore, Suyu was the least likely culprit. She glanced at Suyu and the 4 Fish Dragon Realm Pathmasters, and her eyes became cold. She laughed angrily and said, "How dare you steal from me? You really don't respect me." She had to admit that the thief was too skillful. He was actually able to sneak into her storage world without her noticing. However, it was a pity that people at her level all had unique auras, and she could sense their location with just a thought. "I'd like to see who is so daring." She closed her eyes slightly and opened them abruptly. She looked in a certain direction and laughed angrily. "Let's go and see who they are." With a wave of her sleeves, the few of them, including Suyu, left the place instantly. Meanwhile, the people who were still searching for Suyu couldn't find him even after a thorough search. Instead, they found a well-hidden formation by accident. Why is there a concealment formation? Ghost, I sensed that something was amiss. Suyu was nowhere to be found, but he left a concealment formation. Could there be some secret? A black light shot out of his eyes and shattered the formation. Chapter 2333. What appeared in front of them were top-notch treasures, talismans, and elixirs of the highest grade. Among all the items, there was one that was the most eye-catching. It was a cup that was emitting a gentle light. It was slightly taller than a teacup, and clear spiritual liquid flowed inside, emitting a rich fragrance. Those who smelled it all felt their fatigue disappear, and their bodies relax. The Holy Grail of Light. Gui Yen recognized it, and his expression changed rapidly. The Holy Grail of Light was the legacy token that the Great Palace Master of the Palace of Light always carried with him. Only the Great Palace Master of the Palace of Light could wield it. Why was it here? The bad feeling in his heart grew stronger and stronger. Swish, at that moment, a few members of the Nine Swords Pavilion, who could not control themselves, suddenly rushed forward to fight for the treasures in the formation. Especially the Holy Grail, several people were fighting for it. Gui Yan's expression changed abruptly, and he shouted, "Don't move, put it down." However, in the face of a shocking treasure, there were not many people as calm as he was. They completely disregarded Gui Yan's warning, and were frantically fighting for it. A bunch of fools. This is a trap. Gui Yan personally took action, shooting out several beams of light from his eyes to separate them. After a round of hard work, they finally woke up from their frenzied state of snatching. Think about it, why would the legacy token of the Palace of Light be here? Gui Yan shouted. Why would Su lead us here? After that, they finally realized that something was wrong. But, didn't Suyu fall into our trap? How could he have had the chance to set up a trap here? It doesn't make sense, someone said doubtfully. Gui Yan's mood was unusually heavy. In his plan, Su Yu had indeed fallen into their trap. However, there was an exception. That was, Su Yu had already seen through his plan in advance. He thought that this was a brilliant move, but in fact, Su Yu had already predicted that he would do this. His subsequent appearance and escape was the real, pushing the boat with the current. The people of the sword-seeking pavilion had mistakenly thought that their plan had succeeded, and had chased them all the way here, only to discover the lost legacy token of the Palace of Light. Thinking of this, Gui Yan was unwilling to admit that this was true. He did not believe that a person's calculation ability could be so precise that it was as if he could predict the future. However, all the signs indicated that the other party was indeed an expert in using schemes without any loopholes. Put everything down, wipe the traces on them, and leave immediately. Ghost Eye felt that the situation was far from good, and he ordered. The 6 members of the 9-sword pavilion felt a wave of reluctance in their hearts. These were all top-grade magic treasures that were rarely seen. They couldn't be bought even if one had the money. It would be a pity to give up like this. Just as they were hesitating, a cold snort was heard. I was wondering who it was. So it's the juniors of the sword-seeking pavilion. Thump! Ghost Eye's heart sank, as if he had fallen into a hunter's trap. The space in front of them suddenly shone brightly, and a group of people walked out of the blinding light. The leader of the group was a beautiful woman with almond-shaped eyes. She was dressed luxuriously and had a graceful temperament. She gave off a majestic feeling. His aura was impenetrable, but it gave off a boundless pressure. Seeing her, Ghost Eye's heart almost jumped out of his throat. The worst situation had occurred. No, it was worse than the worst-case scenario. The great palace master himself had arrived. He immediately stepped forward and bowed respectfully. "Greetings, great palace master of the Palace of Light, Ghost Eye." The rest of the members of the 9-sword pavilion, who were holding the treasures, were at a loss because of the sudden arrival of the great palace master. They were stunned and motionless. The great palace master's almond-shaped eyes swept over them. When his gaze fell on the Holy Grail in one of their hands, his eyes turned cold. I have to say, the juniors of the sword-seeking pavilion are full of talented people. You should be proud of yourselves for stealing the legacy token from under my nose. Traces of murderous intent blew into everyone's heart like a cold wind. Walala! The other 6 finally put down the things in their hands like hot potatoes, crying out that they were innocent. Ghost Eye hurriedly said, "Great Palace Master, please listen to my explanation. How could we steal the token of the Palace of Light?" "Humph!" A fish-dragon realm master snorted coldly, causing the whole world to tremble. "Were we blind to have misjudged the scene of you dividing the loot?" At this moment, Ghost Eye hated this group of idiotic teammates. Or rather, he felt an inexplicable fear of Su Yu's scheming ability. Could it be that Su Yu knew exactly when they discovered the formation and when they fought for the treasures? Otherwise, how could it be so coincidental that the people of the Palace of Light saw this scene? Thinking of this, he could not help but look at Su Yu. He saw Su Yu with his hands in his sleeves, looking calm and unruffled. "Why are you looking at me?" Su Yu noticed Ghost Eye's gaze and asked curiously, "You should explain to the great palace master how you stole the legacy token." Ghost Eye's heart skipped a beat. He was sure that everything was done by Su Yu. He looked at Su Yu with awe in his eyes. "Great Palace Master, I have something to report." Ghost Eye knelt down on one knee to show his respect. "We chased Su Yu all the way here, and just happened to find something here. Great Palace Master, we came here and successfully caught the thief. Great Palace Master, please consider the coincidence." The Great Palace Master narrowed his eyes and said calmly, "Which Su Yu are you talking about?" "The one next to the Great Palace Master." Ghost Eye stared at Su Yu coldly. "If the Great Palace Master does not believe me, we are willing to search our souls. You only need to search our memories to confirm whether we are lying or not." The great palace master's face turned cold again, and he said softly, "Are you talking about Su Yu of the Nightless Empire? When did you start chasing him?" "Between 2 hours ago and now." Ghost Eye's heart gradually calmed down. As long as the truth was told, the great palace master, with his wisdom, should understand what was going on. Unexpectedly, the great palace master said calmly, "What if I tell you that Su Yu has been by my side for the past few hours and has never left?" In the past, Su Yu was either communicating with her or comprehending in the secret room. How could Su Yu have the opportunity to be chased by them and framed? What's more, he even stole her most important treasure right in front of her face. What? Ghost Eye couldn't believe it. They were obviously chasing Su Yu. He was absolutely right. But how could Su Yu be by the great palace master's side during that time? It was totally inexplicable. Of course, this could be explained. Su Yu's body was in the secret room, but his soul had left his body and left silently under the cover of the small Kylon. Only an empty shell was left in the secret room, and the aura emitted from his body was still there. Therefore, the great palace master mistakenly thought that Su Yu had never left. Seeing the great palace master's face turn cold, Ghost Eye said hurriedly, "Wait. I can let the grand palace master search my memory for the past 2 hours to ensure that not a single word of what I and my brothers have said is false." The great palace master thought for a while, and when he was about to say something, Su Yu said from the side, "Great Palace Master, since this is related to me, I have to say something. If I remember correctly, the person in front of me is Ghost Eye, who is ranked second in the Nine Swords Pavilion, right? Isn't he most proficient in soul secret techniques? Modifying people's memories is a piece of cake for him." Ghost Eye's heart shook again. Did Su Yu expect that he would use memory search as evidence, so he investigated his information in advance? Not many people knew that he could modify other people's memories. It would be difficult to find out if he didn't investigate carefully. The great palace master pondered for a while, and looked at Ghost Eye and the others with unfriendly eyes. She naturally knew that Ghost Eye was a soul body, and she had also heard about his ability to modify other people's memories. After being reminded by Su Yu, she immediately became suspicious. "Great Palace Master, I think it's the most useless to reason with the people of the sword-seeking pavilion," Su Yu said helplessly. Su Yu said helplessly, "You've already caught him red-handed, yet you're still trying to deny it. You even tried to frame me. Today, I happen to be next to you, and you can testify for me. If I wasn't in your sight, wouldn't I have been deceived by them?" His words struck a chord in the hearts of the 4 Fish Dragon Realm Masters. One of them said in disgust, "The people of the sword-seeking pavilion have always been despicable and shameless. Even if they were caught red-handed, they wouldn't admit it. Great Palace Master, you really don't need to talk nonsense with them. To deal with such shameless people, the best way is to deal with them directly." "That's right. They have been caught red-handed, and they have no remorse at all. They even want to frame Mr. Su." "Yes, as Mr. Su said, fortunately, we can all testify for Mr. Su. Otherwise, wouldn't we have been deceived by them? The people of the sword-seeking pavilion really don't take the Palace of Light seriously. They are so fearless." Everyone hated the sword-seeking pavilion's recent actions to the core. Hence, everyone gave them a push when they were down, and they took it for granted that they would blame them. Hearing their words, the great palace master's eyes turned cold, and he sneered. "You stole the Palace of Light's legacy token. Even if you are the descendants of the Ghost Teacher, you will not be forgiven." Ghost Eye couldn't explain himself. It was clearly Su Yu's doing, but he was now the one to blame. He stared at Su Yu fiercely, and his face was full of fear and resentment. "Su, this isn't over yet." As he spoke, he crushed a jade slip hidden in his sleeve. All of a sudden, the space around them rippled, and a mass of pitch-black fog appeared, enveloping the 7 of them. The great palace master's eyes turned cold, and she struck out with her jade-like palm. The ghost fog shook violently, and Ghost Eye and the others, who were within it, felt their hearts in their throats. It was as if they had walked into the gates of hell. This was the attack of the three great experts of the colored glaze civilization, and they couldn't resist at all. Humph! Guang Yu, how dare you attack my people? Are you courting death? A skinny palm suddenly reached out from the ghost fog, and it met the great palace master's palm. Guang Yu's jade-like face changed slightly, and he said coldly, "Ghost teacher, you allowed your people to steal my legacy token. Aren't you provoking a war between the two sides? What a joke! What's the point of me stealing your token?" The ghost teacher asked disdainfully. This question caused the radiant jade to hesitate slightly. Chapter 2334. However, Su Yu, who was standing at the side, said indifferently, "I don't understand what Sword Seeker Pavilion Master is saying. It seems that not too long ago, you already had your hands on the star positioning plate. By right, the star positioning plate should be useless to you." The hesitation in Radiant Jade's heart immediately disappeared. The people of the Seek Sword Pavilion were secretive and insatiable. What was so strange about them stealing the inheritance token of the Palace of Light? Hearing this, a pair of scarlet, dry eyes appeared in the ghost fog and glared at Su Yu. "Little bastard, it's you again. I haven't settled the score with you yet." Su Yu was fearless and calm. "Elder, are you saying that I will stop you from snatching the time-fixing plate? If this is the case, then this junior feels that I have prevented senior from making a mistake, and prevented the dispute between the Palace of Light and the sword-seeking pavilion, and reduced the casualties that could be caused by both sides. This is a great merit. Junior doesn't ask for senior's gratitude, but I also don't want senior to repay kindness with evil." These words made the people of the Palace of Light grin. There weren't many people who could spoil someone else's plans in such a refreshing and refined manner. "Kid, being sharp-tongued isn't a good thing," Ghost Master coldly warned. "Remember to watch your neck from now on. He may bid farewell to you at any time." Finished speaking, the ghost mist retracted and brought Gui Yen and the others away. Before leaving, Ghost Eye's eyes were filled with unwillingness. The meaning in his eyes was very clear. He was saying, "We'll come again. Fight to the death?" The corners of Su Yu's mouth curled up into an unnoticeable smile. Did he really think that his plan had come to an end? No, this was just the beginning. After everyone from the swordsmanship-seeking pavilion left, the Grand Palace Master put away the radiant Holy Grail with an ugly expression. When he looked at Su Yu, he shot him an apologetic look. "Young Master Su, I'm sorry for letting you see its effect. As a great palace master, it was indeed laughable for him to have his most precious inheritance token stolen in front of an outsider." Su Yu comforted him. "Great palace master, you don't have to be like this. Even a horse stumbles, and people are always careless. I think it's better for the Grand Palace Master to be more vigilant in the future. The people from the swordsmanship-seeking pavilion might not let this go." With the swordsmanship-seeking pavilion's style of doing things, they usually wouldn't stop until they achieved their goals. "I understand." The Grand Palace Mistress clenched her fists. She had nowhere to vent her anger. She did not chase after him. Firstly, she was afraid of Ghost Teacher's strength. Secondly, she did not want their battle to affect the glazed ancient cave. Thus, he had nowhere to vent his anger. The only gratifying thing was that Su Yu did not look down on him. Instead, he took the initiative to comfort him. This made her feel better about Su Yu. After thinking for a moment, he took out a drop of milky white spiritual liquid from the Holy Grail and said, "This is the light divine liquid that is unique to the Light Palace. It is the favorite food of the light divine deer. It was inherited from that mysterious old Taoist, Zhuo Tianran. But even the light divine deer will only consume it once every 100 years. This drop is for you. If you have a spirit pet, give it to it. It's good for it." Su Yu accepted it calmly, then said sincerely, "Thank you, Great Palace Master. Then this junior will take his leave." He looked around vigilantly, as if he was afraid that the swordsmanship-seeking pavilion would come back for revenge. Well, let's go. Be careful on the way, the great palace lord said. Only then did Su Yu leave and return to the inn where the Nightless Empire was stationed. When he arrived at the inn, Su Yu set up a space enchantment. Wow, the great palace master was sold by the master, but he still counted the money for the master. You are really bad, the little Kylan said with a smile. It was Su Yu who had stolen the legacy token. In the end, not only did the great palace master wrongly blame the swordsmanship-seeking pavilion, but he also rewarded Su Yu with a precious drop of light divine liquid. Su Yu smiled. I'm afraid I'll have to sell the great palace master again. With a flick of his finger, he threw the divine liquid over. The little Kylan opened its mouth and swallowed it. A warm energy was slowly released from the little Kylan's body, making it roll on the ground comfortably. This is good stuff. I feel like my cultivation has improved again. Are you going to break through again? The little Kylan had just broken through not long ago. The little Kylan laughed. It's still early. If there are another 100 drops, it should be no problem. Su Yu suddenly smiled mysteriously. Then do you want more light divine liquid? The little Kylan smiled wickedly. You want me to steal it again? To be able to stealthily steal the inheritance token from the storage world of the great palace lord of the Light Palace, in this world, besides the little Kylan, who else could it be? The light divine cup was stolen by the little Kylan, and Su Yu's soul had brought it to the abandoned manor to hide it. Then, he played along and showed up to lure Ghost Eye and the others over. It seemed like a simple process, but the timing had to be precise. Otherwise, it would be easily seen through by Ghost Eye, who was a master of tricks. Okay. The little Kylan was very motivated after tasting the sweetness of the light divine liquid. Half a day later, the little Kylan came back angrily and lay on the ground. That evil old woman hid the light divine cup somewhere. I couldn't find it after looking for it for so long. I'm so angry. Su Yu was not surprised. Losing the light divine cup once was enough to wake the great palace master up. How could he allow him to lose it again? Then what did you steal? Su Yu asked. The little Kylan said fiercely. That old woman hid the light divine cup and didn't let me drink it. So, I stole something very important from her. What is it? Something very important? What could it be? Doo-doo, bra, undergarments, I stole all of them. The little Kylan said angrily. Su Yu was stunned and asked, where are the things? They have been sent to the rooms of Ghost Eye and the others. They are in every room. Not a single one was left out, the little Kylan said unhappily. Su Yu smiled strangely. Now we can rest easy and not worry about being disturbed. On the other side, in a secret room, the 7 people of Ghost Eye met again in secret. We suffered a great defeat this time because we underestimated the enemy. Don't be discouraged, we can start again. Ghost Eye comforted the depressed people. That's right. We were tricked by Su Yu. How can we let this go? A member of the 9 Swords Pavilion clenched his fists and said. His words immediately aroused their indignation. Yes, we must make that despicable person pay the price he deserves. So shameless. He was the one who stole it, but in the end, he framed us for it. Did you see his expression when he was next to the great palace master? His innocent face is so infuriating. Yes, how can there be such a shameless person in this world? How could he do such a thing? Ghost Eye, who was listening at the side, had to cough to interrupt their conversation. What a schemer had was wisdom in the eyes of his own people, but cunning in the eyes of his enemies. While they were evaluating Su Yu, they were also talking about themselves. In terms of being despicable, shameless, and shameless, they were not inferior to Su Yu. Let's all take a break and go back to think about whether there is a better way to punish Su Yu, Ghost Eye suggested. Everyone nodded. If they did not teach Su Yu a deep lesson, they would not be able to swallow their anger. Ghost Eye also returned to his room while pondering. Dozens of plans flashed through his mind, but the confident him was now very hesitant. He was worried that everything would be seen through by Su Yu like last time, and he would be led by the nose and fall into a trap. As he pondered, he opened the seal of his residence and entered the room. As soon as he entered, a faint fragrance wafted into his nostrils. Ghost Eye came back to his senses and walked in the direction of the fragrance. He found a pink bra on his bed. Bra? Whose is it? Ghost Eye picked it up and rubbed it, slightly confused. His residence was protected by a seal, and outsiders should not be able to enter at all. Just as he was feeling puzzled, a voice that scared him out of his wits appeared. Of course it's mine. Ghost Eye was almost scared to death. Without thinking, he ran out. However, before he could take a step, his head was hit by a destructive palm. Puff! As an eye, it was almost annihilated on the spot, leaving only a remnant of its soul to escape. And this was the result of the sword-seeking pavilion master, Ghost Teacher, discovering it in time and stopping it. Bright Jade, are you crazy? How dare you attack in Liuli City? Aren't you afraid of affecting the Glaze Ancient Cave? Ghost Teacher's angry roar came from the sky. Unexpectedly, the radiant Jade seemed to have gone mad and attacked Ghost Teacher without a care. What glazed ancient cave? Go to hell. Even if I have to destroy the glazed ancient cave today, I will burn you despicable vermin to ashes. She was really furious. First, he stole her holy grail, and then he came to steal her bra, undergarment and other undergarments. And each member of the 9 Swords Pavilion got one. This was a blatant provocation. How could Bright Jade not be angry? Bang bang! The sky flashed with muffled sounds like thunder. The entire Liuli city was shaking. Monarch Shaoyefeng's expression changed, and he immediately rushed forward to mediate. If they continued fighting, it would really affect the Glaze Ancient Cave below. Only then did the radiant Jade gradually stop, but her face was flushed with anger, and she said angrily, "Tell those bastards of yours not to take even half a step out of the manor. Otherwise, I will kill every single one of them, and every group of them will be exterminated." Radiant Jade, who had always been kind and magnanimous to others, flew into a rage. The oath she made was even integrated into heaven and earth. Whoosh! Full of anger, Bright Jade left, but she did not go far. Instead, she waited in the dark. As long as there was an opportunity, she would immediately attack Ghost Eye and the rest. Ghost Teacher was furious. Ghost Eye and the rest had always been in the villa and did not leave. How could they have the chance to steal Bright Jade's bra? Moreover, what was the point of stealing it? But Bright Jade did not listen to his explanation. She was caught red-handed and had been caught twice. Why would she listen to his explanation? Ghost Teacher returned dejectedly and immediately treated Ghost Eye, who was heavily injured. At the same time, he gathered the other 6 members of the 9 Swords Pavilion with pale faces. Obviously, they had heard Bright Jade's angry oath. They were now the target of a super expert, who would not be afraid. During this period, you will stay by my side and not leave. This meant that they could not leave the villa until they reached the Glaze Ancient Cave. Thinking of this, they were both afraid and angry. Chapter 23:35. What he was afraid of was the death revenge of Radiance Jade. Of course, he was angry because of Su Yu. As the saying goes, when one sits at home, disaster comes from the heavens. What did they do? Wasn't it just a ploy behind closed doors? Why was he inexplicably framed as a bus thief and even targeted by one of the 3 super experts of the colored glaze civilization? Their hearts were filled with resentment and injustice. Ghost Eye's situation was the most miserable. His soul had almost shattered for no reason. In the following days, he had to continuously heal himself. "Surnamed Su, I'm not done with you," Ghost Eye roared at the sky. In the following days, Liuli City was indeed peaceful. There were no more people from the Sikh Sword Pavilion strolling on the streets, not to mention those who came out to cause trouble. The people of the Nightless Empire and the Palace of Light had obtained the long-awaited peace. They did not understand why this was happening. Even Xie Xiaoye and the others. In a private room of a restaurant controlled by the Nightless Kingdom, Su Yu, Wuxin Taiyu, Xie Xiaoye, and Xian Hua were having a small gathering. How did you manage to stuff our Grand Palace Lord's bra into the hands of the sword-seeking pavilion's people? Xian Hua asked with a cold expression. How could Su Yu admit it? Su Yu shrugged his shoulders and said helplessly, "You've wronged me. Even your great palace master believes that it was the sword-seeking pavilion's doing, so why are you the only one who thinks that it was me?" "Don't quibble," Xian Hua said with a straight face. The others might not know about it, but she was aware that Su Yu had said that he would deal with them personally. The outcome was exactly the same as what Su Yu had planned. Xian Hua found it hard to believe that Su Yu wasn't behind all of this. The heartless iron arrester cast a knowing smile at Su Yu. "I didn't expect that apart from your strength, your ability to scheme is also quite brilliant." When Su Yu said he was going to take action personally, she was very confused about where Su Yu got his confidence from and where Xie Xiaoye got her confidence in Su Yu. Now, he finally understood that Su Yu seemed to be quite good at using stratagems. He had actually fooled the people of the swordsmanship-seeking pavilion. One had to know that the ghost eye of the Seek Sword Pavilion was an expert in playing tricks. It was extremely difficult to set up a trap for him. In the end, Su Yu really succeeded. Xie Xiaoye, who was at the side, laughed happily. She looked at Su Yu, her eyes full of admiration. When it comes to scheming, there is probably no one who is a match for Su Yu. Gui Yen can only blame his bad luck for running into him. Su Yu had an innocent look on his face. "Hey, I told you, it has nothing to do with me. How could I have the ability to steal the palace master's bra?" "Humph," Xian Hua said angrily. She clearly knew that it was Su Yu's doing, but she couldn't find any evidence to use against him. So, apart from glaring at him, there was nothing she could do. Su Yu coughed dryly and changed the topic. "In a few days, the Glaze Ancient Cave will officially open. I wonder if you understand the situation inside." Only Xian Hua had the right to speak on this matter. Su Yu, Xie Xiaoye, and the Wuxin Iron Arrester were all outsiders. Only Xian Hua was born in the Colored Glaze civilization. Xian Hua became serious, shaking her head. "What I know is very limited, because the last time the Glazed Ancient Cavern opened was already a very long time ago, at least several generations before the Palace of Light." Heartless Iron Constable said, "Miss Xian Hua, please enlighten me." "All right, I will tell you sooner or later." Since they were working together, it was only right for them to share information. "What I know was told to me by our great palace master. According to her, the Glaze Ancient Cave is divided into 3 levels: heaven, earth, and human. The human level is the lowest level, the earth level is the middle level, and the highest is the heaven level. In every level, there is an ancient glaze platform. If you meditate on it, your training speed will be 10 times faster than outside. Moreover, the sea in the stone platform will release a mysterious aura that is beneficial to the cultivation of the Path Master. If you train for 5 years in the human level, the probability of breaking through to the next level of the Path Master is 30%. If you train for 5 years in the earth level, the probability of breaking through is 60%, and if you train for the heaven level, the probability of breaking through is 100%. After listening, Xie Xiaoye and the Wuxin Iron Arrester had different reactions. The former was deeply excited, while the latter was more reserved. Although her emotions could not be seen on the surface, the excitement in her heart was still visible. Even Su Yu yearned for it. 100% chance of breaking through to the next level of the Path Master was really impressive. It was a pity that Su Yu had yet to break through to the next level of the Path Master, so the aura was probably useless to him. However, it would still be very beneficial to the little Kylan. "Is there a difference in the difficulty of the level 3 heavens?" The Wuxin Iron Arrestor pondered. The greater the reward, the greater the risk. Yes. The human level is filled with many glaze monsters of the master level. They can swallow anyone who enters and turn them into a part of the glaze ancient cave. Occasionally, there are even glaze monsters of the fish dragon realm. Suyu already knew that the fish dragon realm master was at the same level as Xia Yan. As he thought about it, his heart sank. Was the human level so dangerous? The earth level is a level that is not recommended for entry. The glaze monsters of the lowest level are all at the fish dragon realm. There is even a strange glaze emperor whose strength is equivalent to our great palace master. At this point, Xian Hua had already stopped at the sight of the earth level, not daring to have any wild hopes. As for the heaven and earth level, it is forbidden to enter. In fact, it is unknown whether there is an ancient glaze platform in the heaven level, because no one has ever trained in it. Xian Hua revealed a look of deep fear. According to the great palace master, the lowest cultivation of the glaze monsters inside is on par with her. It is very likely that there are strong people who are far stronger than her. As for the heaven level, even the bright light jade would not dare enter. Even if she, Ghost Teacher, and Xiao Lifeng join forces, they might not be able to enter easily. Therefore, the great palace master suggested that our goal is the human level. This time, we are only training. There is no need to risk our lives. Otherwise, we will lose more than we gain. Hearing this, Xie Xiaoye gasped. What kind of place is the glaze ancient cave? How could there be such a terrifying glaze monster? It was the first time that the heartless Iron Constable had heard of it. He nodded and said, "It is indeed unexpected that there is such a place within the glaze civilization. I wonder how it was formed." Su Yu's brows were tightly knitted. The stronger the living creature, the more resources it would consume to grow. The glaze monsters were so powerful, and the resources they consumed were unimaginable. Could a small glaze ancient cave accommodate the growth of so many living creatures? His heart was full of questions. "Is there any other information?" Su Yu asked. Xian Hua shook her head. "That's about it. However, the Sword Seeker Pavilion should know more, because the glaze ancient cave was discovered by the ancestors of the Sword Seeker Pavilion. I don't know how many secrets they have inherited about the glaze ancient cave." Su Yu and the other two frowned slightly. Based on the Sword Seeker Pavilion's style, there was no doubt that they were hiding something. On this trip to the glaze ancient cave, they really had to be wary of the Sword Seeker Pavilion. "Let's call it a day. We will depart in 3 days," Xian Hua said. Su Yu nodded. Knowing the dangers of the glaze ancient cave, Su Yu needed to make some preparations. "By the way, I heard from the great palace master that the Nightless Empire is going to add 2 more representatives," Xian Hua suddenly remembered and asked. Su Yu was a little confused. "The Emperor did not mention it to me. At present, there were only a few representatives from the Nightless Empire. They were Su Yu, the heartless Iron Constable, Xie Xiaoye, and Princess Qianyu. The rest were not available. Where did the other 2 come from? So you don't know either." "It seems that the 2 of them paid a high price to enter," Xian Hua said indifferently. "The more people there were from the Nightless Empire, the more powerful their cooperation would be." The group of people dispersed. Su Yu thought about it for a moment, then went back to his residence to prepare. At present, the greatest treasure he had should be the remnant of the Yuan realm. Next was the undead soul realm. Over the next few days, he sorted out everything he had learned and adjusted his state of mind. 3 days later, he arrived at the center of the city. At the same time, Guangming Jade, Xiao Lifeng, and the Ghost Teacher were all there. Of course, the atmosphere between the 3 of them was not friendly. Guangming Jade's eyes were full of murderous intent, constantly scanning the Ghost Eye and the others. They did not dare to raise their heads. The Ghost Teacher stared at Guangming Jade coldly. Xiao Lifeng stood firmly beside Guangming Jade, standing up to the Ghost Teacher. The arrival of Su Yu and the others drew the ghost teacher's cold eyes. Especially when he saw Su Yu, the fury in his eyes could not be more obvious. Su Yu was fearless, looking straight at the ghost teacher. All of a sudden, Su Yu vaguely felt that there was something wrong with the ghost teacher, but he could not tell what was wrong. "Kid, look at me again, and I will gouge your eyes out," the ghost teacher said coldly. Before Su Yu could speak, Guangming Jade said coldly, "Is that so? Then I will annihilate all of your disciples, not even sparing a single chicken or dog." Xiao Lifeng also stepped forward and snorted. "Ghost teacher, you are a senior. How about you have some magnanimity?" Magnanimity? The ghost teacher was so angry that he almost vomited blood. Su Yu's actions did not seem like something a junior would do. How could he forgive him? However, this was not the time to argue. "Is everyone here? If so, let's depart quickly," the ghost teacher urged. The people of the Bright Palace were all here, but the people of the Nightless Empire were not. Right at that moment, a white cloud flew over from afar. 3 people stood on the cloud. Su Yu looked over. Apart from one of the people in the bamboo hat, who had deliberately concealed his face, he actually knew the other 2. One of them was Biyun Hongxian from the number 1 peerless family. The other person who led the way could be considered an old acquaintance. "Greetings, Your Majesty. The 2 have arrived." The one who spoke was a seemingly noble and arrogant layman. He had a transcendent temperament, which made him seem incompatible with the world. However, he was bowing and scraping before the monarch. He did not have the integrity that an otherworldly expert should have. It was obvious who this person was. "Thank you, Layman Qingyuan," the monarch said calmly. This person was Layman Qingyuan, who had been sent by the monarch to Liuli City to prepare for matters related to the Glaze ancient cave. Not long ago, he had been ordered to bring the 2 new members here. Layman Qingyuan said, "It is the duty of a subject to serve Your Majesty." He lowered his posture and stood slightly to the side. Coincidentally, Su Yu was standing beside him. He subconsciously gave Su Yu a kind smile and said, "Next, I will have to trouble all of you to fight for the Empire. Fight for Su Yu?" The next moment, Layman Qingyuan's eyes widened. Chapter 2336. How could he not recognize Su Yu? The young man who had delivered the letter to Miezheng of the 7 absolute civilizations, the young man who had offended him. He had almost forgotten about this person. He had never thought that he would meet him here. Coming back to his senses, Householder Qingyuan thought that Su Yu was just an insignificant person who happened to be standing beside the heartless Iron Constable. He waved his hand at him, his tone impatient and disdainful. "Please move aside, don't block the representative of the Empire." Su Yu touched his nose. He wanted to say something, but looking at Householder Qingyuan, who was pretending to be aloof, he took a step back. "It's really... You don't have any rules at all. Just anyone can stand here." Householder Qingyuan spoke calmly as he stood at Su Yu's previous position. He didn't even look at him. The heartless Iron Constable beside him frowned. "Who are you?" Householder Qingyuan immediately put on a pleasant expression. "You must be the famous heartless Iron Constable of the West regions? I am Householder Qingyuan. It's an honor to meet you." The heartless Iron Constable said calmly, "I am asking why you are standing beside me." Householder Qingyuan was stunned. How could a small fry like Su Yu stand here, while he, the teacher of Princess Qianyue and the famous celestial Lord Qingyuan, had to stand aside? However, due to the importance of the heartless Iron Constable in the eyes of the monarch, Householder Qingyuan only dared to curse in his heart. He obediently stood back. As he retreated, he encountered Su Yu again. Householder Qingyuan almost bumped into him as he retreated. His expression turned cold. "Do you have ears? I asked you to leave this place. How could a small fry like you enter this place? Get lost." He had suffered a lot at the hands of the heartless Iron Catcher, so he had a lot of anger in his heart. Now that he had run into Su Yu, who he disliked, he would naturally not be polite with his words. Hee. Su Yu laughed. A small fry? However, he did not argue. Under householder Qingyuan's stare, he continued to retreat until he was in the middle of the crowd. Only then did householder Qingyuan snort and look away. The monarch was busy making arrangements for Byun Hongxian and the man in the bamboo hat. He did not notice the situation. Come, you guys should get to know each other. The monarch brought the two of them to the gathering place and introduced them to Wu Xian, Iron Constable, Xian Hua, and the others. This is by Yun Hongxian, you should have met her before. The heartless Iron Constable had met him once before. He nodded his chin, indicating that he was greeting him. This is young Master Long due to some special reasons. He cannot show his true face. Please understand. The monarch introduced the man in the bamboo hat. I hope we can cooperate happily, the man in the bamboo hat said in a hoarse voice. The heartless Iron Constable took another look at the man in the bamboo hat. She could tell that even his voice was fake. For some reason, he had to hide it so deeply. After introducing the two of them, the monarch began to introduce the people from the Nightless Empire and the Palace of Light. He raised his hand and said, where is he? The direction he was pointing to was exactly where Su Yu was standing. Why was Su Yu nowhere to be found? The heartless Iron Constable glanced at the crowd behind her and saw Su Yu with his arms crossed in front of his chest. He was calm and composed, as if he was just a spectator. She couldn't help but find it funny. What was he trying to do? The monarch followed her gaze and said in astonishment, Young Master Su, what are you doing? Why did the representative of the Nightless Empire retreat into the crowd? Su Yu said helplessly, I was driven here by someone. I had no choice. He is powerful, and I am afraid of offending him. Driven away by someone? The monarch wondered if Su Yu was joking. Who in the Nightless Empire didn't know that Su Yu was the chief representative appointed by him? Who didn't know that Su Yu's strength was extraordinary? Who dared to drive him away? Who is it? Tell me about it. The monarch was surprised. Su Yu said, Whoever is standing where I should be standing is the one who will be the one. The monarch looked over. The place where Su Yu had been standing was empty. He looked forward and saw householder Qingyuan standing a little behind him. His face was abnormally pale, and his eyes were darting around. The monarch's face fell. You drove young Master Su into the crowd? Plop. The monarch was extremely dignified. With just a glance, layman Qingyuan's inner resistance was completely obliterated. His knees went soft as he knelt on the ground and cried, King, please spare my life. Please spare my life. I didn't know that he was the Imperial Kingdom's representative. In fact, even at this moment, he couldn't believe that a mere half-step Dowlord had become the chief representative of the Empire. You didn't know? The monarch glared at him. The swordsmanship-seeking veranda and the surrounding martial artists were already whispering to each other. Householder Qingyuan had made such a blunder on such a solemn occasion. He had lost face. Get lost. The monarch was furious. He wanted to slap this old thing to death. You are not allowed to step foot into the Nightless Empire for the next 100 years. He still hadn't vented his anger, so he chased householder Qingyuan out of the Empire and forbade him from ever entering again. Householder Qingyuan's face turned pale, and he was disheartened. The cavern that he had worked so hard to manage for many years had been burned to the ground. Now, he didn't even have a place to stay. Father, you don't have to be so harsh. After all, he used to be my teacher. Princess Qianyue stood up and spoke for him. It wasn't that she cared about the teacher-student relationship between her and householder Qingyuan, but that she didn't want Su Yu to take the limelight. Just because he had offended Su Yu, he wanted to expel the famous householder Qingyuan from the empire. Wasn't her father thinking too highly of Su Yu? Shut up. Unexpectedly, the monarch, who had always doted on her, shouted sternly, he treated the talents of the empire so harshly. He is a meritorious official. Not crippling his cultivation is already being lenient. Princess Qianyue stuck out her tongue. Sensing that her father was really angry, she didn't dare to plead for mercy. The monarch looked at householder Qingyuan, who shivered and left immediately. Wait, return the 9-5 heaven-cold needle that I gave you, the monarch said. The Nightless Empire had 99 9-5 heaven-cold needles, and one of them had been given to householder Qingyuan. Now that he was being chased out of the Nightless Empire, the needle had to be returned. Hearing this, householder Qingyuan's body trembled violently. With a long face, he reluctantly took out the 9-5 heaven-cold needle. This was one of his most powerful treasures, and it was gone just like that. If Princess Qianyue hadn't pleaded for mercy, the monarch might not have remembered it. Now it was all over. Princess Qianyue lowered her head, looking apologetic. Not only had she failed to save householder Qingyuan, but she had also harmed him. Householder Qingyuan was chased away in front of the crowd, his face covered in dirt. The monarch came before Suyu. His expression softened as he said, "I'm very sorry, you have been wronged." Suyu shook his head. "He didn't do anything to me, so why should I be wronged? No matter." Although he said that, the monarch still felt a little embarrassed. His own people had almost chased Suyu away in front of the Glaze ancient cave. No matter what, he had failed in his duty. This 9-5 heaven-cold needle is for you to protect yourself. Consider it a small compensation. The monarch thought for a moment, then gave the needle to Suyu. Princess Qianyue cast a jealous look at him. The 9-5 heaven-cold needle was not given away so easily. Unless it was someone who had made a great contribution to the empire, no one could get it easily. Householder Qingyuan had only gotten one because she had begged for it in order to gain her father's favor. Even so, she had put in a lot of effort to get it. Now, she had taken the initiative to give it to Suyu. The heartless Iron Constable looked at him in surprise. Even she had never received such treatment. The monarch's expectations of Suyu were quite high. Xie Xiaoye was also very envious. It was said that the 9-5 heaven-cold needle was made by the first monarch of the Nightless Empire. There were a total of 99 of them, and each of them had the power to freeze a fish-dragon realm master into ice shards on the spot. Unexpectedly, Suyu had gotten one so easily. Suyu was also a little envious of the item. He bowed gratefully. "Thank you, Your Majesty." "Haha, make good use of it," the monarch instructed, then introduced Suyu to Biyun Hongxian and the man in the bamboo hat. "This is the chief representative of the empire, Suyu," the monarch introduced. Biyun Hongxian smiled gently and said teasingly, "You have quite a lot of names." In the first peerless family, he called himself Su Rushu, and in the colored glaze civilization, he called himself Suyu. Which one was his real name? Suyu replied with a slight smile. When his eyes swept over the man in the bamboo hat, he vaguely sensed a very faint trace of hostility. Suyu looked him up and down and said, "Brother, have we met before?" The man in the bamboo hat said hoarsely, "No." "If not, where did the hostility come from?" Suyu was slightly vigilant. He had most likely met this man before, and there was a conflict between them. Suyu calmly withdrew his gaze and nodded with a smile. "Are you done with the introductions? Let's start, don't waste time," the Ghost Master said impatiently. Xiao Lifeng and Guangming Yu looked at each other and nodded in agreement. "Everyone, listen up. Once the entrance of the Glaze ancient cave is opened, 2 passages will appear. They will not last longer than 3 breaths. You must enter within 3 breaths," Xiao Lifeng reminded solemnly. Yang Hua of the Bright Palace asked, "What will happen if we don't pass and get stuck in the passage?" "You will die," Xiao Lifeng answered concisely and affirmatively. "Die." Everyone became much more solemn. "So, you must be quick, without any delay," Xiao Lifeng reminded again. "Who else has a question?" The group of heaven rulers tensed their muscles, ready to charge forward with all their might. They kept their mouths shut and stared intently 1,000 feet in front of them. That was where the two entrances were going to appear. "Get ready!" Xiao Lifeng bellowed. He looked at Guangming Yu and the Ghost Master and opened their own space worlds at the same time. This time, they had brought with them the 100 years of accumulation from their respective influences, almost emptying their respective influences. In order to create hope for the heaven rulers they had nurtured to enter an 8-star civilization, they had given everything they had. Crash! The cavern worlds opened, and the majestic and suffocating resources inside were all burned. Burning purple flames flowed out of the 3 space worlds and gathered 1,000 feet in front of them. As more and more resources were burned, the gathered flames became more vigorous, faintly forming the shape of 2 doors. They were coming. Su Yu was on high alert, most of his attention focused on the front. But because he was wary of Mr. Dragon and the Sword Seeker Pavilion, he still paid some attention to them. Who knew that when he paid attention, he really did discover something unusual. Chapter 23:37. The people of the Light Palace and the Sleepless Empire were staring straight ahead. The people of the Sword-Seeking Pavilion seemed to be paying attention to what was ahead, but they were not. They glanced behind them from time to time, and their postures were not sprinting forward, but backward. Su Yu immediately realized that something was wrong. Be careful behind, however, Su Yu's warning was too late. The 2 giant doors in front of them were still slowly taking shape, but a giant purple door appeared behind them without warning. The people of the Sword-Seeking Pavilion were prepared, and all the members of the 9 Swords Pavilion flew inside. When the people of the Light Palace and the Sleepless Empire noticed, they had all flown in. In the short span of 3 breaths, 2 breaths had already passed. There was only 1 breath left for them to react, and there was no way they could break in. Only Su Yu could detect it in advance, and he had a chance to break in. He sighed secretly. The Light Palace and the Sleepless Empire had been careless. The people of the Sword-Seeking Pavilion knew the Glaze Ancient Cave the most, and they should have taken precautions. In the end, they were too superstitious about the past, and thought that the passageway would take shape in front of them. Su Yu had no time to care about the people of the Light Palace and the Sleepless Empire, and he was the only one who could react. He could only enter first to see if he could find a way to open the passageway from the inside, and then let the people of the Light Palace and the Sleepless Empire in. Swoosh! Su Yu shot towards the entrance like an arrow from a bow. However, just as he was about to enter, a sinister and terrifying ghostly hand reached out to grab him. "Junior, I am here, and you think you can do whatever you want?" The Ghost Master had been paying attention to Su Yu, and when he realized that he had noticed in time, he immediately tried to stop him. Su Yu's heart sank and he had to retreat. A space domain was used to fold space and he avoided the grab. Even so, he was still shaken by the ghostly claw, and the blood in his body tumbled, and he had a taste of blood in his throat. Xiao Lifeng and Guang Yu also rushed over, shielding Su Yu behind them. Looking at the giant door that was slowly closing, the 2 were shocked and bewildered. "My king, it's bad, the 2 doors are gone." "Grand Palace Master, look!" Their people immediately reminded them. The 2 looked back and saw the 2 giant doors condensed from flames 1,000 feet away, shrinking rapidly. Both of them turned pale with fright. They glared at Ghost Master in shock and anger. "What did you do?" Ghost Master said calmly, "Hee, I don't have the ability to tamper with the Glaze Ancient Cave. It's you guys who don't know how to open the Glaze Ancient Cave's entrance." Sure enough, the Swordsmanship-Seeking Pavilion had deliberately concealed many things. As a result, when the Glazed Ancient Cave opened, only those who were prepared in advance from the Swordsmanship-Seeking Pavilion could enter. The rest of the people were all blocked outside. The Palace of Light and the Nightless Imperial Kingdom had spent 100 years accumulating, but in the end, it had all become a gift for the Swordsmanship-Seeking Pavilion. Xiao Lifeng and Radiant Jade, who had been greatly deceived, were furious. The glazed ancient cave was related to whether or not they could survive the destruction of the era. They could tolerate anything, but this was beyond their bottom line. Ghost teacher, have you thought about how you want to die? Radiant Jade's face was ice-cold. Xiao Lifeng was equally unfriendly. He stared at him and said, "Fine. Since you don't want the Nightless Empire to live, I will destroy your sword-seek pavilion with my remaining body." Both of them were truly infuriated. They had decided to eliminate the swordsmanship-seeking pavilion at all costs. "Ha ha ha, do you think I'm afraid of you?" Ghost Master was unbridled. He laughed loudly and flew into the sky. His look of being unable to do anything to him was indeed infuriating. Xiao Lifeng and Radiant Jade, who were enraged, prepared to chase after him and fight to the death with Ghost Master. However, right at that moment Suyu reminded them, "Calm down, both of you. Instead of being entangled with that old man, we might as well destroy the Glaze ancient cave and bury all his precious pupils inside." His words brought the two of them back to reality. The reason why the three super strong men had agreed not to fight in the Glaze ancient city was because they were worried that their abilities would be too powerful and affect the Glaze ancient cave. In the past, they had restrained themselves in order to protect that place. Now that the swordsmanship-seeking pavilion had played a ruthless trick and excluded everyone except them, what else was there to worry about? Moreover, Ghost Master's behavior was rather suspicious. This man had always been vicious, but he had flown into the sky before the battle had even begun. His intention was clear. He wanted to lure the two super strong men away and create a safe environment for the heaven rulers of the swordsmanship-seeking pavilion who had entered the Glaze ancient cave. Understanding this, Xiao Lifeng and Radiant Jade looked at each other and saw the crazed desire for revenge in each other's eyes. Boom! The two of them attacked together, and they attacked the area beneath Glaze City. All of a sudden, the entire Glaze City was moved by the two of them to a safe zone hundreds of millions of miles away, revealing a bare piece of land. Below them was the location of the Glaze ancient cave. The two of them attacked together, their faces ashen. How terrifying was the all-out attack of a super strong man. Almost half of the Glaze civilization felt an incomparably huge tremor. It was as if a dead heart had suddenly started beating. The place where they attacked left a bottomless abyss, and the remnants of the destructive energy wandered on the scorched earth. Faintly, a special and rich spiritual energy leaked out from the depths of the ground. It was not the aura of the Glaze civilization, but the Glaze ancient cave. The attack just now had indeed affected the Glaze ancient cave. The two of them did not stop. After the first attack, they were preparing for an even more majestic attack. They looked as if they would not rest until they killed the elites of the swordsmanship-seeking pavilion. "Stop!" The ghost teacher, who had already escaped into the sky, came back with an ashen face and tried to stop them. The rest of the light glanced at Suyu, and the murderous intent in their eyes reached an unprecedented peak. It was this man again. If not for his reminder, the furious Xiao Lifeng and Radiant Jade might not have thought of this. It was all because of him that the plan to lure the two of them away had failed completely. "Won't I lose face if I stop just because you say so?" Xiao Lifeng sneered and released the attack that he had been preparing for a long time. Radiant Jade did not show any mercy. His cold expression was extremely serious. Boom! This time, the surface of the entire Glaze civilization was cracked open. Countless mountains were crushed, rivers collapsed, and countless cities collapsed into ruins. The attack of the two of them had directly triggered a disaster for the Glaze civilization. The area above the Glaze ancient cave, which was the source of the disaster, was a scene of devastation. Looking up, the surroundings were completely unrecognizable. Nothing of the past could be seen. An even purer aura was surging from the depths of the earth, indicating that the Glaze ancient cave had been affected even more severely. Perhaps a shocking change had already occurred in the Glaze ancient cave, causing the deaths of some of the people of the sword-seeking veranda. The ghost teacher was anxious, and he yelled, "Enough! Stop, all of you! I have a way to salvage the situation and let your people re-enter the Glaze ancient cave." Xiao Lifeng and Radiant Jade did not believe a single word he said. They continued to prepare for the next attack without saying a word. If they continued to fight, the Glaze ancient cave might really be in trouble. The ghost teacher was both angry and anxious. He said hurriedly, "I, the ghost teacher, swear to the heavenly law that everything I have said is true. Otherwise, I will be reduced to ashes immediately." The higher the level of the martial artist, the more binding the oath they made to the heavens. For a super-strong martial artist like the ghost teacher, if he made an oath and violated it, he would suffer the backlash of the oath. Hearing that, Xiao Lifeng and Radiant Jade slowly stopped and said, "Speak." The ghost teacher said reluctantly, "According to the inheritance of the sword-seeking veranda, as long as these flames have not been extinguished, there is still hope to open another door." Xiao Lifeng looked at the dying flames and said, "Tell me the details." Radiant Jade also became nervous, and he stared at the other party. "As long as you take out 100 years of accumulation and throw it into the flames again, I will have a secret technique to summon the door back." There were two conditions. The first was 100 years of accumulation, and the second was a secret technique. "I will provide the secret technique, but I am afraid that the two of you will have to pay for the accumulation of 100 years. The ghost teacher dodged his gaze. Xiao Lifeng snorted angrily, "Why should we pay? Everything was caused by the sword-seeking veranda. Of course you have to take responsibility." Radiant Jade's attitude was the same. What a joke. The sword-seeking veranda had wasted their 200 years of accumulation, and they had to pay for another 100 years? Large forces like them were expending huge amounts of resources at every moment. The resources they had stored were only enough to maintain the normal operation of the force for 150 years. They had already used up 100 years, and the remaining resources were only enough for 50 years. This was already the limit. If even the last 50 years of accumulation had to be used up, what would the people in their force eat and drink, and what would they use to cultivate? They would fall apart in a short time. So, of course, they would not do it. The ghost teacher, however, had a shameless look on his face. He said, "If you are not willing, there is nothing I can do. The resources of the sword-seeking veranda are running low, and we cannot afford to pay for 100 years' worth of resources." Xiao Lifeng and Radiant Jade were livid. After all, it was a dead end. What a waste of breath! Radiant Jade shouted coldly. He prepared to attack again, preparing to launch an all-out attack on the Glaze ancient cave. Xiao Lifeng shook his sleeves, swearing to take revenge on the sword-seeking veranda. The ghost teacher watched anxiously, his heart filled with regret. The current situation was that, if those people really died because of the strange changes in the Glaze ancient cave, all their efforts would be in vain. Just as the two sides were in a dilemma, Suyu suddenly stood up and said leisurely, "Sword-seeking veranda master, you should be responsible for all the resources. If you cannot afford it now, I don't mind if you write an IOU." "IOU?" Xiao Lifeng and Radiant Jade were stunned. What nonsense was Suyu talking about? How could a half-step Dowlord like him produce the resources of a force like theirs that had been accumulated for 100 years? Although the ghost teacher hated Suyu, he had no choice but to suppress his anger at this moment. He said, "You can give us so many resources?" "Of course." Suyu's heart moved. He let go of the 9-jade spiritual pearl and poured out all the resources within it. Ever since he had stepped onto the path of martial arts, the treasures he had seized, the relics and secret realms he had explored were innumerable. The wealth he had accumulated over the years had long reached an unimaginable level. Although the gains he made each time were insignificant compared to the resources of the Glaze civilization, they accumulated over time. Besides, he did not consume much himself, so he had accumulated quite a lot. Chapter 23:38. Moreover, he still had a lot of primordial energy, which could also be considered a resource. Apart from that, the nursery of the supreme growing soil had nurtured many fairy plants that were no less than tens of millions of years old. Gathered together, it was barely enough for one of the three great influences to accumulate for 100 years. Looking at the endless amount of resources that were piling up, Xiao Lifeng and Radiant Jade were both shocked and overjoyed. One really couldn't judge a book by its cover. Su Yu was only a half-step pathmaster, yet he had managed to accumulate 100 years' worth of the faction's resources in one go? Even Xie Xiaoye, who knew Su Yu well, was dumbfounded. She never expected Su Yu to be so rich. The Ghost Master heaved a sigh of relief and said, "All right, use these resources first. I'll return them to you in 100 years. 100 years later, the era would be destroyed. Whether Su Yu would still be alive in this world was unknown. How could he repay the debt? Haha, do you think I'm a 3-year-old, sword-seeking pavilion master?" Su Yu sneered. "The era will be destroyed in 80 years. If you die, how are you going to pay me back?" The Ghost Master's little scheme did not escape Su Yu's eyes. Feeling guilty, he said, "You can't say that. 100 years later, the sword-seeking pavilion will still exist in this world. When that time comes—" "Hey, why did you put them away?" Su Yu was putting the resources back into the 9-jade spiritual pearl. He said calmly, "Since the sword-seeking pavilion can't give you the promissory note, the deal is off." Xiao Lifeng and Guangming Jade felt their hearts ache, but they couldn't bring themselves to ask Su Yu to give up these resources for free. They could only challenge the Ghost Master. "It seems that you are not sincere. If that's the case, there's no need to discuss anything. We'll just destroy the Glaze Ancient Cave and end it all." As they spoke, the two attacked again. The Ghost Master had no choice but to stop them. "All right, I'll write the promissory note. But Su Yu, what do you want? If you ask me to repay those resources in a few years or decades, I'm sure I can't." Su Yu's eyes flashed with wisdom. "It's very simple. You mortgage the entire sword-seeking pavilion to me now, and I'll lend you these resources. When you pay back the resources, I'll return the sword-seeking pavilion to you. Of course, the resources I lend you will be counted in, and I'll pay you 10% more every year." Hearing this, Ghost Master was furious. "Ridiculous! Why should I mortgage the sword-seeking pavilion to you? Didn't this mean that the sword-seeking pavilion had become Su Yu's? Even if the debt was repaid 100 years later, with Su Yu's 100 years of operation, would the sword-seeking pavilion still be the same?" He was afraid that he would lose both his money and his life. Su Yu shrugged. "It's up to you." Seeing that the deal had failed, Xiao Lifeng and Guangming Jade glared at him and threatened, "Fine. Since you have chosen to ask the Sword Pavilion and do not want this batch of disciples who entered the glazed ancient cave, then we have nothing more to talk about." The two of them prepared to attack the glazed ancient cave again. Ghost Master's chest felt heavy and sullen. How did things develop like this? He carefully weighed whether he should ask Jian Xian or Hunting Shadow and the other prodigies. The end of the era was coming. If they gave up on Hunting Shadow and the others, who would return from the 8-star civilization and assist the sword-seeking pavilion in the future? But to give up on the sword-seek pavilion that had been in operation for so many years, wouldn't that be neglecting the essentials? The purpose of sending more prodigies to the 8-star civilization was to help the sword-seeking pavilion survive the great calamity of the world. It would be foolish to give up the sword-seeking pavilion for the sake of some prodigies. However, Ghost Master's eyes turned. If he mortgaged the sword-seeking pavilion to Su Yu, but Su Yu accidentally perished, wouldn't the sword-seeking pavilion come back? With that thought in mind, his thoughts suddenly became clear. What was there to hesitate about with such a simple solution? "Fine, I agree. Now, in the name of the sword-seeking pavilion master, I will sign a contract with you," Ghost Master agreed readily. Su Yu's eyes flickered slightly, secretly amused. He could guess what Ghost Master was planning with his toes. But would it be so easy to kill him? He had the holy mortal body, and the only one who could kill him was the Emperor of the Holy Mountain. He pretended to be completely unaware of the Ghost Master's plan and happily signed the contract with him. Ghost Master's oath was added into the contract. If he broke it, he would immediately be struck by lightning and turned into ashes. Therefore, there was no need to worry about Ghost Master breaking his promise. Under the witness of Xiao Lifeng and Bright Jade, the sword-seeking pavilion, one of the three great influences of the colored glaze civilization, an ancient superpower, became Su Yu's. All the pupils, the mountain gate, the protective spell, and so on in the sword-seeking pavilion belonged to Su Yu. From now on, Su Yu was the new pavilion master of the sword-seeking pavilion. Witnessing this epic transaction with their own eyes, Xiao Lifeng and Bright Jade felt a little surreal. With just 100 years of accumulated resources, he had bought the sword-seeking pavilion? And Su Yu, from a small fry in the beginning, had suddenly become the leader of the three great influences who were on par with them? Alright, you guys get ready. Ghost Master took a deep look at Su Yu and thought to himself, enjoy your few remaining years of life. He threw the 100 years' worth of resources back into the flames that were about to be extinguished, and the flames surged again. Ghost Master immediately used his secret technique, and a passageway formed in the flames. Go in now, quickly, Xiao Lifeng and Bright Jade said. With Su Yu in the lead, a group of people quickly passed through the door and entered the Glaze ancient cave. After a series of complicated space shuttles, Su Yu suddenly felt an astonishing spiritual pressure around him, and his body fell uncontrollably. His body's desolate power showed faint signs of being suppressed. When he opened his eyes and saw the scene before him, he could not help but be slightly surprised. What appeared before him was an exceptionally strange forest. The trees were extremely huge, and each one was like a giant tree that reached the heavens. All the people present added together were not even as big as a leaf in the book. The grass by the side of the road was ridiculously tall, reaching a height of 10,000 feet. The stones in the grass were also as big as small mountains. When he first entered this place, Su Yu felt as if he had been shrunk 100 times and thrown into a forest. All of a sudden, a rustling sound could be heard. Everyone looked up and saw a shadow looming over them. It was a grasshopper 10,000 feet in size. It flew over their heads and gnawed on the giant grass. The grasshopper was not some special creature like a wild beast, but just an ordinary grasshopper. It was only because of the special environment it grew in that it was abnormally huge. Hiss, hiss, just as the grasshopper flew over their heads, an afterimage that looked like red lightning suddenly flashed across the sky. The grasshopper flew backward at a speed 100 times faster than before. What followed was the sound of chewing. It was the sound of flesh and bones being gnawed on. Some of the people with lower cultivation levels and lacking in confidence felt a chill run down their spines. What was that? When the chewing sound stopped, the grass fell into a deathly silence. They were very familiar with that silence. It was the powerful creature crawling nearby, intimidating the surrounding creatures into not daring to make a move. Thinking back to the afterimage just now, everyone's hearts pounded. Everyone kept their composure, looking at their surroundings motionlessly, trying to cope with any changes. But not everyone could remain so calm. Huang Yang of the Bright Light Palace had cold sweat on his forehead. After a long stalemate, he could no longer endure the suffocating atmosphere and slowly retreated. As he moved, Xianhua shouted, "Don't move!" But it was too late. A bolt of blood-red lightning swept over from the depths of the grass. With the speed of lightning, it swept Huang Yang away. Before Xianhua could stop it, Huang Yang was pulled into the depths of the grass. Chase. Xianhua drew the destiny spear in the air, holding it as she gave chase. Su Yu's gaze flickered. Follow me, don't get separated. In an unknown territory, it was better to stick together. After chasing for 1,000,000 feet, they finally arrived in front of a giant creature. This was a terrifying creature that was 10 times the size of the grasshopper from before. It looked like an ordinary lizard, but it was tens of thousands of feet in size. At this moment, half of Huang Yang's body was in its mouth. The upper half had already been swallowed. Judging from the aura it was giving off, Huang Yang was already dead. Creak. The lizard raised its neck and swallowed Huang Yang whole, then chewed and ate him on the spot. The people of the Bright Light Palace were furious. After it finished eating the yellow ocean, the lizard stuck out its long tongue and looked at Su Yu and the others with its giant eyes. It was as if it was looking at a group of food that had come to its doorstep. Whoosh! A streak of red shot out from its mouth, as fast as lightning. Only then did they see that it was the lizard's tongue. This time, Xianhua was prepared. The destiny spear pierced through the air, instantly piercing through the lizard's tongue. The lizard, which had suffered great pain, began to struggle violently. Its huge body rolled rapidly, and at the same time, its tyrannical and thick tail kept beating the ground. The people from both sides were immediately beaten into a mess. Some were sent flying, while others were vomiting blood. Only Su Yu and the others, whose abilities were at the level of family masters, were unharmed. Attack! Kill the lizard! Xianhua drew another destiny spear, thrusting it toward its eyes. Kong Chu, Xie Xiaoye, Wuxin Taiyu, and the others all attacked. With the 4 of them working together, any path master would find it difficult to defend against them. But the lizard in front of them was terrifyingly strong. When Xianhua's destiny spear came toward it, it closed its eyes, using a thin membrane to protect its eyes. The destiny spear was deflected away. Kong Chu and Xie Xiaoye's attacks on its back were like nails hitting a steel plate. They were completely ineffective. Only Wuxin Taiyu's attacks landed on its armpit, causing the lizard to cry out in pain. Even so, it was not seriously injured. In the outside world, such a thing would be unimaginable. Hiss! The lizard was infuriated. It swung its tail crazily, then jumped up and pounced toward the crowd. Everyone's heads darkened, as if the sky was really collapsing. Get out of my way! At this moment, Su Yu's arms were covered by a layer of dragon scales, which turned into powerful dragon claws. As he slapped his arms upward, countless bolts of lightning flowed through his arms and into the lizard's body. Instantly, the giant lizard was sent flying back into the sky by Su Yu's arms. At the same time, under the terrifying lightning, the lizard was directly turned into an electric roasted lizard. Xianhua smiled bitterly as she put away the destiny spear. She looked enviously at Su Yu's unimaginably strong physique. In terms of physique, all of the people here combined couldn't compare to him.